Jesus. Area. Dublin, colon. This is Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast celebrating our journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, The Storms, and its fourth issue, Dublin Days, from city to shore and across the sea. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in today, tomorrow, next year, next week on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Music, and even YouTube. This special episode is the audio companion to our printed journal. The journal itself has 150 pages filled with 93 star contributors, all celebrating the stories, the curiosities, the characters of one single city, Ballyohaclia. These are our tales of Dublin, and we've gathered as many of those 93 stars as possible so that you can read along the journal and hear their voices in the background. Now, before we begin, enormous thanks and gratitude to Anne-Marie and Linda from Dublin UNESCO City of Literature, Dublin City Council for their financial support, their encouragement and their cheers. And also a huge thank you to Sarah, Sheila and Vanessa from Fingal Arts and Fingal County Council. None of this would be possible without the funding and support. Thank you also, of course, to the wonderful Winding Stair Bookshop, to Books Upstairs, both here in Dublin, for stocking us, and very soon we'll be over in Charlie Burns in Galway. But most importantly, none of this would be possible without the 93 contributors, although it's 92 if you don't include me, who sparkled from the pages of this issue. And the first person whose name went on the list was my fantastic sub-editor for this issue, Fiona O'Rourke, writer, mentor, workshop facilitator, who you'll hear reading her own prose piece on this episode later on. Fiona, as I've said to you now at our two launches, our live launch here in Dublin at Argillan Castle and the other night at our Zoom launch, thank you so much for walking into this storm with me. It has truly been a joy to work with you. This journey itself into this storm has been very unique as it zoomed in on just one location, one city, but it brought to life so many different characters, corners, curiosities. The earliest tale in this journal goes back to Trinity College in 1904, and from there we move on through to the echoes of 1916, the tenements, the Monto, the libraries, past the canals and the caminos, to the stardust, the suburbs, the cinemas, the rebels, the riots, the coastline, to Rush, to Skerries, to the glass houses, to the shore, the sea, and the stories that came back from across those waves. Like so many of us who have left, we, along with our stories and images, somehow have found our way back in. And with that in mind, let's get into this new issue. Let's uncover this capital city, its chaos, its clutter, its continual evolution, this ever-changing, ever-screaming, shitting, drinking, shouting, revolving, accepting, pissing, protesting place that we call home. These are our tales, our visions of the city. All that's left for you to do is pour yourself a little whiskey, a pint of Guinness, slice yourself a piece of soda bread, some gurk cake or whatever takes your fancy. This is Eat the Storm, celebrating the Storms Journal. My name is Damien B Donnelly, your host and producer and the editor-in-chief of The Storms, and I hope you enjoy the show. And to start us off, I'm going to read the opening poem, which is by Rebecca Darcy, called All Right Dublin. And now that I see you again, I could eat you alive. Before you have the chance to eat me, you two-faced get. All right, Dublin, you black pool, you dichotomous heart, you two-faced wretch, so north, so south, so dirt poor, so filthy rich. If Dublin made me, it made me all wrong. Made me for sea going, made me for leave taking. But that's all right, Dublin. I'll stay. All right, Dublin? All right. This issue is divided into 4 sections: in the city, through the suburbs, along the shore and across the sea. And to begin with, taking us through the city, we have Fionnuala Cahill, Bernie Crawford, and to open up this special episode, Brian Kirk.
Hi, my name is Brian Kirk and I'm delighted to be part of the Storms Journal issue 4. I'm going to read from my piece, The Liffey Speaks. The darkness eaten up by light, piss yellow and cold white, and the blinking blue of squad cars, the hum of car engines, generators, motors of one kind or another at the backs of hotels and restaurants, the last of the patrons stepping out into the night under a fine rain that seeps into your bones, the slap of tired feet on the damp pavement beating time with your heart. You can hear the blood pump in your head. Umbrellas open out as if by magic. Strong hands grip handles, canopies spread wide, keeping partners dry, but the breeze coming in is so cold, cold enough to cause hands to pull coat lapels together around bare necks. Cigarettes are lit, faces illuminated like 17th century Dutch paintings in the National Gallery up the road. Hands rub together, feet stamp on the ground, waiting for the taxi rank. Everyone surprisingly muted now, as if they recognise that day is done, that night has taken over. Night lights on, red and blue, twin chimney stacks, incinerator spume inking night sky blue to black. Sleep is beckoning, causing eyes to water, mouths to open wide in heedless yawns. Nothing is to be hidden now. It is too late. Too late to be abroad alone in a city that is changing, becoming something other than itself, becoming its true self perhaps. The day's mask removed, the way a girl removes her makeup last thing before she sleeps. No hiding now in the dark light, in the day invisible. Now everyone notices you. The taxi driver sitting in his waiting car, his light on, engine idling. The chef in checkered pants who smokes a final cigarette before he goes inside to finish up for the night. The black-clad bouncer at the front door of the nightclub, vigilant, willing eye contact from someone, anyone, so he might get to use his fists, vent his disappointment with his life. Letting it go like a mad dog slipped from the leash. Stay by me, follow my course to the start, wherever that is, up in the mountains away from the city. Only the trees and the fields and the sheep to share it with. Remember the trip to Glendalough years ago, eating chips off a van in the car park, walking by the lakes, a different world, so much nature, so much green and brown and blue and white of sky. Birds in the trees, and rabbits. There were rabbits at the edge of a thick circle of trees. It filled your heart. Your mother's dress, pink flowers in fine print on white. All you can see is smiles on the faces of people who nod hello as they pass. Everything normal here. Just another happy family out for the day in the mountains. Brother and sister and mother. No father, but that's all the better. Away from the school and the flat where my slow water swallows daughter before giving into the sea. There is time to forget, to just be in the sunshine, time to drink in the sweet air, flavoured by flower and shrub, the rough bark of trees inviting your touch, the sour sap rising in all things, in you, feeling yourself growing, becoming something more than you seemed back at home. Hear me, feel the sun on your closed eyes, taste the salt of the chips, smell the vinegar's cut in your nostrils. See the sun's glow through closed eyelids. Blot out the images. Shh. Listen. Feel. Speak. Speak of the family if you can. Speak of the love that you felt at times, that you missed at others. Speak of the times you wanted the clocks to stop, to be as you were for all time, to be a child only, loved and loving, trusting, wanted, wanting only to be loved and wanted. Speak, whisper, mouth the words you want to say now while you can, before the night blooms into morning. And where will you be then? Where will the sun find you, bone-tired from walking all night through the city that watches your every move, that wants to protect you, that huddles its buildings around you to keep you warm, that bridges the cold river to keep your feet dry, that lays its dark blanket on top of you so that you might sleep? Stay by my side while I whisper to you as you walk into town. Not lies, but truths, things you already know in your heart. Not only my voice maybe, but yours also, saying the things you always knew, but never acknowledged. You are a burden. You are a problem. You have no future. You are not loved. You cannot love. You are unwanted. You are alone in this world, and always will be.
Hello, my name is Fiona O'Rourke and my poem is called Fresh Off the Boat. Fresh off the boat. This city is opportunity cost. Meaty ghosts marble enough I could walk head down into them, catch bruises. Leonard had Marianne on the end of a pen until the day she died. I'll have Dublin, a rainless night, stood alone in the paint sampler of tasteful greys, the halfpenny stretched like a cat across a laboured chest. Sing me another one about the drink, priests, women. I'll grab a leafy ear, pull you from the bed and hang you on the line with the linen. You never know how long the weather will hold. Oh, to admire the dance of your unfolded pieces airing.
Hello, my name is Bernie Crawford and I'm going to read my poem, The Liffey Swim. The title of the poem is taken from Jack B. Yeats' painting, The Liffey Swim. This painting won Ireland's first Olympic medal in Paris in 1924. The painting captures the 1923 men's race. The first Liffey Swim for women didn't take place until 1991. The Liffey Swim. Oh, to whip off my olive velvet cloche, toss it in the air, let my hair hang loose, off with my high-collared shirt, loosen the strings of my corset, free my belly and hips, undo the buttons on my boots, unroll my long silk stockings and throw myself, bloomers billowing from the Guinness barge at Victoria Quay, into the heaving fury of the Liffey. Oh, to be part of the race, to swim beneath the arches of O'Connell Bridge, rush of river in my ears, wild roar of the crowd, hear friends shout out my name. Alas, I'm woman, always bystander, the one left on the quay, trying to push closer to the parapet to see the action.
And continuing our adventure through the city of Dublin, we next have Catherine Marry, Enda Coyle Green, Frances Browner. But first, taking us back to Trinity College in 1904, this is Terry Donaghy.
The meeting. The absence of people was most inconvenient. Even the quadrangle was empty, apart from a solitary figure dashing precariously across wet cobblestones. The porter had insisted she step inside his office before pointing to a notice pinned to a board. Curie candidates. Please meet in Mulligan's of Poolbeg Street at 3 p.m. today, 6th of June, 1904. She had hardly time to formulate a question when he had begun gesticulating into mid-air, emphasizing directions: turn right, cross the road, keep left, turn right again, and you can't miss Mulligan's on the left. His strong brogue and dropped vowels meant she was still unsure of where exactly Poolbeg Street was located, but she was too frustrated to ask him to repeat himself. In her experience, porters were much more helpful and deferential. Sheltering under a stone arch, she considered her options. Returning to her lodgings on Merrion Square would mean spending the evening alone, to think only of the interview the next morning. Alternatively, she could make her way to Poolbeg Street and meet the other Curie candidates. At least she would know who she's up against. Decision made, she snapped open her umbrella and stepped into the stream of people. It hadn't stopped raining since her arrival the previous afternoon. The sea crossing had been uneventful, however the smoke belching from the ship's funnels had made her feel quite unwell. She had been so wretched she hadn't noticed the majestic Royal Marine Hotel overlooking the bay until she was seated on the train. The journey from Kingstown to Westland Row had helped lift her spirits, as the views of the coastline and small stations from her first-class carriage were interesting despite the mizzling rain. She had thought herself fortunate not to be travelling in the opened-topped carriages of second class. To her surprise, Mulligan's of Poolbeg Street was a licensed premises. As she fiddled with her umbrella, a thin man wearing an eye patch under round spectacles pushed through the door towards her, unleashing a wall of heat and noise. Bracing herself, she poked her way through the crowd. Her progress became easier as the bar led to two bigger rooms. Groups of rowdy men were arm wrestling over round tables in the first room. A rectangular table dominated the second room, around which sat several ladies not unlike herself. One of the ladies caught her eye and beckoned her over. "Are you a Curie candidate?" the lady shouted over the noise. "Yes, I am." "Are you?" she shouted back. "We all are." The lady gestured along the table. The ladies nodded and one raised her hand. "Would you like a drink?" The lady beckoned to a serving boy. "Dry sherry, please." The others ordered gin and whisky, and the lady who had raised her hand in greeting and was dressed in what looked like a man's suit ordered stout. They moved along the bench, allowing her to squeeze in. They smiled and nodded, awkward until the drinks arrived. The lady who had greeted her, Edith, raised her glass, loudly declaring "Sláinte." The rest of the ladies followed suit, their shyness dissolving in laughter as onlookers joined them with loud cheers. She felt herself relax a little after the first sips of warm sherry. She watched as the ladies attempted to chat over the noise. They were 6 in total, including herself, varying in age, demeanour and style of dress. 4 ladies wore wedding bands. The lady wearing the man's suit sported a silk cravat and, like her, looked around instead of chatting. Introductions were properly made when the din subsided. Ellen, a botanist from West Cork, was established to be the youngest member of the group. Mary, an astronomer from a large domain in County Offaly, was the next youngest. Ellen and Mary were not married. Ellen's father would not permit it, and Mary admitted that wearing gentlemen's suits dissuaded even the most ardent of suitors. Edith, Kathleen and Agnes were similar in age. Edith and Kathleen were married. Agnes was a widow like herself. All 3 ladies had physics backgrounds and Irish heritage, but educated in England. She was the only chemist among them. This declaration caused much eye-raising, as Madame Curie was well known in scientific circles for her preference for diversity, discipline, and love of chemists. As the afternoon wore on, the ladies relaxed enough to converse with the gentlemen sharing their table, who turned out to be medical students from Trinity College, having just completed their final examinations. The exuberant students were accompanied by an older gentleman, who she recognised as the solitary figure slipping on the wet cobblestones earlier in the day. He introduced himself as Mr. Edward Bennett, class tutor. Mr. Bennett invited the ladies to join him and his charges on their revelries. As an enticement, he told the ladies they would travel to the Long Hall, another licensed premises, on the world-renowned electrified tram with new top covers, a mere 20 minutes away along Route 57, which terminated in the suburb of Terenure. After much discussion, only Agnes and herself agreed to accompany Mr. Bennett and the students. The others cried off, citing exhaustion, but agreed to meet up the following day after their interviews were completed. The group boarded tram car number 15, emblazoned with the words Galty Cheese, at the noisy junction between Westmoreland Street and College Street, in front of the Corinthian columns of the Bank of Ireland. She found herself sitting upstairs and shared a seat with Mr. Bennett, who pointed out various sights. The tram trundled past Trinity College, eliciting rowdy cheers from the students, to join Dame Street, a busy two-way thoroughfare, each side separated by huge statues mounted on stone plinths and tall wrought iron poles supporting electric wiring for the trams. She looked up at the black figure of Henry Grattan reaching skywards, and King William III on his horse, and down on bicycles as well as horse-drawn carts jostling for position while avoiding the trams. Trams approaching from the opposite direction displayed bold advertisements for Neve's Food, Nestle Milk, and mysteriously Arthur Webb's Trocken Boots. Men in bowler hats, men with walking sticks, working men in collarless shirts, and ladies in long skirts walked and wandered along wide pavements and under awnings which obscured shop fronts from her view. As they turned onto South Great George's Street, her heart lurched in delight at the sight of the Pimm's Brothers department store. She vowed to return tomorrow, no matter how the interview went. Despite their protests, Mr. Bennett paid the conductor for tram tickets for herself and Agnes. He insisted they were his guests, that it was his duty to ensure they were well looked after. She shared a look of amusement with Agnes. Being looked after was an unexpected pleasure in the loneliness of widowhood. The ladies were ushered under the red and white canopies of the Long Hall. Mr. Bennett showed himself to be familiar with the establishment and staff, who herded the group past a gleaming brass-rimmed counter and into a long, narrow snug. The atmosphere in this bar was more serene and grand compared to Mulligan's, which she thought might be attributed to the intimate decor and soft light reflected by ornate mirrors. She had never seen a red painted ceiling before. Drinks were ordered and produced through the private hatch. As it was less noisy in the confines of the snug, she was able to listen as one of the students regaled her with gossip about her beloved Madame Curie, as well as overhearing Agnes tell Mr. Bennett about the Curie research position they were interviewing for the following morning. He was very intrigued by the fact that they were ladies of science and that Madame Curie was conducting research in Trinity College. Mr. Bennett angled himself alongside her. "Your friends tell me that you're the only chemist in the group. Do you think this will give you an advantage tomorrow?" "All scientists know chemistry is the true science." She glanced at him to determine his reaction. "Is that really your opinion?" he asked. "Of course. Without chemistry there would be no physics, biology, or other disciplines. There are some who might disagree." He raised a bushy eyebrow. "I am not sure if I have any advantage, if I'm honest," she sighed, slumping slightly. "The competition is stiff, and my age may go against me." "What has your age got to do with the position?" "My age and my gender has everything got to do with everything, unfortunately." Now, my dear," he leaned towards her. "From what I have heard of Madame Curie, she will make the right choice." "I do hope so." She raised her glass. Sláinte.
Hello, my name is Catherine Mary and my poem is called Pencil or Moore Street. Somewhere on Moore Street, Saturday afternoon, shoppers sift ticking seconds, a bombardment of clashing scents and colours, nail bar neons, sweet pastel flowers, butcher's signs red inked like blood. At the market, cheap ringed fingers rifle through boxes brimful with blank cards or jewel-coloured pencils, prams stand empty. Just a little note to say I love you. Blue firing SMS kisses exchange lit up hot as a flick of flame. They pass between the awkward tangle and crash of post-lunch teenagers. We will meet soon. Finally, fingers lace. This is my last wish. And some of that text is taken from a letter from Joseph Plunkett to Grace Gifford, written in blue pencil and sent from Moore Street during the Easter Rising in April 1916.
Hello, my name is Enda Coyle Green. The poem I'm going to read has the same title as its first line, so I'll go straight into it. The slant of my hand was similar, I confess. So yes, perhaps I'll give you that. But as regards the unanticipated tilt into intelligence, or the breadth of all those words, dear mother of the sorrowful way, was it not possible to imagine that I could be capable, or simply that you had such little faith in me when you sat down to read the essay I had started after midnight just the night before? Only triggered by my school coat, mud-coloured and slung on the banisters, still dank after Friday's rain. Ah, but yes, you might surmise, if you were not dead. That is indeed a long question, held the way I held my breath days later, in snotty tears, paralysed inside a uniform designed to uglify, my knees twin hammers independent of my will, my fresh heart stuttering with shock. Festering, the outrage stays with me as stretched as that sentence, lacking grace and no doubt broken in all the wrong places, as I was when you spittle-flecked my name before you screamed at me to stand. But here I am in the Hartnett room at the Writers' Centre, only yards away as a crow might crawl from where you hovered with your pure split crystal diction, long fabled late vocation, and probably apocryphal covert conversion, all of which, of course, made you holier than the Pope. I had to badger Ma to prove her innocence and mine. Months afterwards, you muttered to me that once, as a girl, you met Yeats, while with my class I shuffled past you on the high hall's lethal shine. I've often wondered why. But back then, anything I knew of what you'd set us as a subject had been gleaned from the newspapers Da read first, or the assaults we caught at tea time every night in blunted black and white on our TV. Ticking into history, crop-dusted with napalm, or the rubble aftershock and bloom of bombs, names alien and almost known, shot and skinned in an elsewhere which insisted I would have to think. Imagine that. Before I took my pen into my fist to list the blows that persist in being worse than any hurt you could deliver. And let's face it, nothing changes. Children always suffer most. But mea culpa, Mother. I'm ambivalent about forgiving you as I accept my own reflected oldness. A surprise still, moth flickering and vague behind tall windows, Georgian, fine. Led today by bladed gales. Rough weather slouches through a view of Dublin chimneys I remember like a bruise. I've used all the light you never knew to make it fade. I'm writing now, as I did then, to take my gaze out on a path away from what should only be one roofscape, in a lifetime almost spent beneath an empty, blessed sky.
Next up, taking us to the tenements, we have Nicola McEntee.
Buttermilk soap. Ma pawned her iron to buy the coffin. Mrs. Murphy and Mrs. McGrath arrived at our room with the little white box. Mrs. McGrath brought a pot of coddle, which she warmed by the fire. The two women quickly set themselves to work, opening the windows, covering the mirrors and stopping the clock. We were given lemonade and biscuits and told to stay quiet. Ma sat on her chair weeping into her tattered housecoat. Dad just stared on. "Rita," Mrs. Murphy said, "now that you're 15, it's time you learned to lay out a body." I was not scared of dead bodies, but I was haunted by the amount I'd seen. The galloping consumption swept through our street, taking the breath from the old, stealing the young. 3 children in my school died within the same week, including my best friend, Jane. Mrs. Murphy hung a sheet at the back of the room to give us privacy. With a look of encouragement, she put her hand on my shoulder. Gently, I began to bathe my dead baby sister. Running the buttermilk soap along her tiny body, she felt so cold and stiff. I thought of how only days ago I was rocking her to sleep, her big brown eyes staring at me as I sang Ring a Ring a Rosies. I'd tried to keep her warm, keep her safe, but she'd been too small to fight the illness. Her pink cheeks had turned to white. When we finished bathing baby Mary, we wrapped her in a pillowcase and carefully laid her in the tiny coffin and placed it on top of the table. Mrs. McGrath put up a crucifix and lit 2 beeswax candles. A smell I dreaded. Neighbours and family gathered in our tiny room. Granny said the rosary. Snuff and porter were shared among the men. Someone said God had wanted her and it wouldn't be long till Ma had another one. I couldn't understand why God needed so many angels. We waked baby Mary for 2 days and 2 nights. On the 3rd morning, Ma woke us up early and told us to kiss our little sister goodbye. Dad placed her tiny coffin on the front of his bike and cycled up to Glasnevin Cemetery. She was buried alone, sharing her grave with thousands of nameless babies. Dad left the death notice on the door for the week to stop the moneylender from calling.
Bloom and Bloomsday, by Francis Browner. This bloomin' weather, too bloomin' hot it is, even if it is Bloomsday. Molly Bloom and her bloomin' soliloquy. Where did that young Joyce fella get it from? Holed up in his Martello tower, ranting away to himself, the wind raging outside. One sentence is 2,500 words long. Must read it myself some day, when I get the time. Bloomin' Ulysses. Some Greek fella on a journey. Did he ever come back, I wonder? Life is a journey, they say. Some bloomin' journey. So the bloomin' virus destroyed Bloomsday for 2 years. All the wannabe Molly Blooms dressed up with nowhere to go. What are they like anyhow? Year after year since 1954. Following Leopold Bloom, the tramp, around bloomin' Dublin. Gobshites, Roddy Doyle says they are, and he's bloomin' right. Prancing around Sandy Cove in their long dresses and straw hats, off to Kingstown by way of the snot green sea, I ask ye, crossing Sandymount Strand, looking over at the head of Howth, where Molly will have her final say, and then into town they'll go, buying yellow soap in a chemist's shop near Pearse Street, and eating kidneys in the Gresham for breakfast. Bloomin' mad they are. But when you think of it, and I do a lot, all them places are still there. Since 1904, if you don't mind, the 16th of June to be precise, the whole book taking place on one day. If Dublin ever blew up, Joyce said, they could rebuild it by reading Ulysses. That's some laugh. He couldn't even get the bloomin' book published for the longest time. 14 publishers rejecting it. Nobody could read it, that's the why. Still can't. Imagine the novel of the century and nobody can read it. Bloomin' gas crack, that is. Anyhow, the bloomin' weather has always been the one thing constant in this country. Rain, rain and more rain. Until the year of the pandemic. Bloomin' roasting it was those days. Just as well. So we could get out. Imagine being locked up altogether. Locked up, locked down, locked in, locked out. Bloomin' locked we'd be, more like it. They say, them that knows these things, they say that Joyce left Ireland, went away he did, because he could write about it better from afar. That's the why. Bloomin' madman. Where did we get him from at all? Still and all, we're the only country in the world that celebrates a date in literature, they say. They again. Has to be something in that. Has to be something to be proud of. And I am. Proud, that is. Proud as your man Punch. Up to me eyeballs with pride.
And now with Oscar Wilde and Leonardo da Vinci, we have Siobhan Flynn, followed by Janina Aza Kapinska, Clodagh O'Connor and Amanda Bell.
My name is Siobhan Flynn and my poem is called Merrion Square, July 2016. I went to see Leonardo's drawings, fragile and intimate under glass. I saw his own words in his own hand. The seed of the soul is in the heart. In the park across the road, the trees are dressed. Summer's here. Oscar's statue was lounging on his rock, his heart full of possibility. I imagine green stems bursting from his core, tendrils reaching for the sun. He's crowned with golden corn. An abundance of leaves entwines his legs. Blossoms cascade down his shoulders.
Fruit overflows his palms. There should be birds here too, not sparrows and starlings, but flamingos, peacocks, birds of paradise, and vultures waiting for the fall.
A poem by Janina Aza-Karpinska, dedicated to Thomas Dudley of Dublin town. Missed. Bang, bang! Thomas Dudley, your Colt 45 is still on view. That big brass key with heart-shaped hole, framed in memory of all the folk you shot point blank. Bang, bang! Born the same year as your man John Wayne, whose westerns you saw and loved as a kid, played out by your hand in Dublin town. Bang, bang, another bus goes down. Bang, bang, passengers hit the ground. Bang, bang, you'd shout. You're dead, fall down. Bang, bang, the child in you kept up the fight until the day you got caught out, lowered in an unmarked grave, yet still renowned as Bang, bang Thomas Dudley. Streets now silent, more serious since that big brass gun's not in your hands. A whip-round plaque celebrates your life and records the catchphrase that made you stand out. Bang, bang, you're dead, yet still around. Key snatched from St. Peter's hand to level angels in your sights. Make target practice of all the saints who, as one, like Dublin town, welcome Bang Bang Thomas Dudley home.
Hello, my name is Clodagh O'Connor and my story is called Dicing with Dublin. As I turned the corner into Grafton Street, it wasn't a movement that caught my eye, but a stillness. A man with a white painted face and flowing purple gown stood silent, frozen on a wooden plinth. His face looked sad in the mask of makeup. He drew in a crowd. People curved around him as if in a vortex he created by not being. Standing there, I became a statue myself, unable to look away. Someone sniggered on my left, a teenager placing a lit cigarette end on the statue's sandaled foot. I moved forward quickly and brushed it off. My reward was a long, slow, theatrical wink and a blown kiss from his fingers. I blushed at the attention. I skipped down the alleyway to my bus stop past the punks and goths hanging out on the streets. My body loosened and stretched into city life. A cloak of anonymity covered my shoulders like the winter smog that blanketed my suburban digs. My landlady was an ice queen with hard eyes that slid past her face unsmiling. I could have done worse, I suppose. I had my own bathroom, comfortable bed, and the ice queen provided better food than I was used to at home. I made the city my own, walking every inch of it, happily gawping at every landmark I passed. The yeasty smell of the Guinness brewery fought with the tidal whiff of the River Liffey all the way up to O'Connell Street, and every building showed the scars of coal fires in grimy brickwork. I muttered the words of a half-remembered poem from last year's English class. Grey brick upon brick, declamatory bronze. I'd always liked that one. Our art college tutors encouraged us to see the city as our muse. We explored the vast expanse of the Phoenix Park trying to catch the leaps and bucks of the rutting deer as we lay in the grass with our sketch pads. We crept along the edges of the zoo, where the pungent scent of lions assaulted the backs of our throats. Their deep guttural roars rolled in our chests. The next time on Grafton Street, the watching crowd was blocking the way and the guards came to move him on. He showered them with winks and kisses, much to the delight of the remaining onlookers. His performance changed from a fixed statue to a figure that moved at a graceful, deliberate pace up towards Stephen's Green. I followed for a while, but found I couldn't emulate that zen-like slowness and took a left. Down a side street, I found a shop selling face paint and magic tricks. I came out with a full kit of makeup. It took me a week before I tried using it. The face in the mirror stared back at me like a David Bowie album cover. Winter, and we crouched uncomfortably, drawing the wonderland of curios at the Dead Zoo. A Victorian-style natural history museum with nightmarish small, snarling mammals, their fur fading under the light from the glass roof. Skeletal leviathans hung from the ceiling the length of the long room. At the back, covers that I hardly dared move revealed shining blue butterflies. And, upstairs that were tiny and spiralled like a snail shell, a treasure of glass constructed into fairy tale jellyfish and terrifying spikes and slugs. Afterwards, we rewarded ourselves with a trip to Burdock's Chipper. We held the bags of chips to our chests, letting the warmth penetrate through our coats to our hearts, burnt our mouths on the first bite. Salt, grease, warmth and sustenance all wrapped up in one bag, steaming gently into the December dark. As the bells rang out from Christchurch celebrating the coming of Christ, we finished our feast and kissed our greasy, salt-encrusted mouths together. A final time, and there was another slow procession on Grafton Street. Those who loved him held him aloft. The crowd stood in silence, mirroring him as he had been in life. As the cortege passed, I touched my fingers to my lips and blew.
My name is Amanda Bell, and this is a haibun called Connections. Coming up to my finals, I move into a mews close to Dublin city centre. The bed is a mattress on a wide shelf, from which I can reach the kitchen sink and a two-ringed hob. The windows are barred. I rarely see another inhabitant, though I know there are several. We share the windowless shower and lavatory in the hall. Total blackout. The click of my cold coin, groping for the meter. Winter passes, exams end, and I move into another mews. It has 2 bedrooms and a large living room divided from the kitchen by a glass cabinet. My flatmate and I use it to display our collection of wine glasses on the rare occasions they aren't in use. There's a black Bakelite phone on top of the fridge, an extension of the payphone in the main house. Its pips can be tapped. No charge. Distant voices crackling through interference. Joined by another friend, we move again. Our next rental, though newly refurbished, lacks charm. One large Victorian room which has been converted into a 3-bed duplex. The ceiling height upstairs makes it easy to wriggle out the Velux window to sunbathe on the roof. The communal payphone is in the hall on the ground floor. One Sunday evening, opening the door to go downstairs and call my parents, I'm met by a wall of stench and the sound of mumbling. Making my way down the first flight, I see one of the neighbours swaying in the hallway 1 story down, his trousers and underpants around his ankles. I watch as he makes his way down the hall, smearing feces along the Anaglypta wallpaper as he goes, before collapsing like a felled tree across the width of the passageway, blocking the front door. It doesn't occur to me that he could be ill or in need of assistance. I see only the nakedness, the mottled bulk of his soiled body and hide. Holdalls on the pavement, a new sign in the window, room to let.
And now, to continue our journey through the city, we have RJ Burnock, Finn Cassidy, Ger Duffy, and taking us to one of our favourite bookstores, The Winding Stair. This is Katharina Lane.
Dubliners by Katharina Lane. Do you recall lying in bed one early autumn morning before lectures, reading me Dubliners? We were Dubliners then, in our own peculiar private city of love, drinking coffee later in the Winding Stair, when it was a really big bookshop with 3 floors and red-checked oilskin-covered tables by the windows. We never bothered watching other lovers crossing the Halfpenny Bridge. We knew how to walk on water then. Our crossroads and mazes would manifest later. Let them come. Our bridge flows between us still. Should we so wish, we could meet under the Liffey's middle lamp. But we do not dip our toes into her murkiness just yet. Do you recall me copying your reading list? Unlike Dorian Gray, we have made no pact with the devil. Our mirrors don't lie. Your gaze holds me still, unconsciously, consciously. Ismahan skahan sul charad. I am listening to the Velvet Underground. Do you think they knew the Irish proverb too? You are my mirror, just like Nico sings it. You reflected all of me, and I you. Who let the mirror fall? See it here, still splintered, not smashed. It reflects our truth, silvering the shadows without nostalgia. A scattering of knowledge. We are circling back towards source. Since then, I have grown strong. I am a free spirit. I am a white witch. And even if I weigh my hemskirts down, I know this time I will not drown.
Hi, my name is RJ Burnock, and my poem is called The Irish Yeast Company. The Irish Yeast Company. Along a busy city centre street, where broken glass and cigarette ash meet, and sirens echo off of concrete walls, lay ruins for which the drums of time must beat. The brown paint flakes as if a leper came, infecting all around him, who to blame, when rot sets into shops that once sowed yeast, and every other building is the same. The cityscape, it seems, has lost its glow. These fungal black mould ruins have space to grow. If only shops like this sold yeast again, and rose up with the fire, phoenix dough.
Hello, my name is Finn Cassidy. My poem is called A Reunion to Rekindle an Owl Dublin Flame. Under Cleary's clock, nostalgia rocks up, grabs me by the hand, head and heart, kisses me on the lips, hugs my long absence, and with classic story-bud banter, cajoles me down the centre of O'Connell Street in search of an old Dublin sweetheart. My owl Sagosha, her ageing face lures me closer. Her ageless beauty now plays hard to get, making me stroll against her ebb and flow of pouring stout, out along the North Quays towards the park, where I spot and discover a lost commemorative coin, a shimmering shilling puddle in the middle of a cropless acre. She sees me, instinctively rises lark-like to greet me, elevates skywards, pulling me with her into ploughed clouds. Their dark clumps, like her hair, hang motionlessly, as do we. We survey the curvy veins, the pale blue pulsing arteries, born from the depths of a black cosmic pool. We gaze through centuries, pass through ancient gates, drink, dance and dream in the delirium of a Dublin Days. As last light clips the swooping tips of summer's swallows, we descend together to her shallow water's piece of place, where our faces appear bright and young again, like the first love fun rascals we rebels once were, zeally and ready again to face another lifetime's follies. The fearless fire of flaming castles bellowing in our bellies.
Hello, my name is Ger Duffy. My poem is called Bank Holiday in Dublin. In the poem, there's a reference to Maguire, and this is Paul Maguire, who was the 97th victim of the Hillsborough football disaster in 1996. He died in 2021. Bank Holiday in Dublin, after Frank O'Hara. From the hotel window, Dave and I could see the Aveva Stadium, lit like a lozenge. In Merrion Park, a man and a woman balanced on a rope strung between trees. She kept falling. We ordered eggs Benedict at Pogue and Tara Street and were just in time to see the Jack Yates, all those blues.
On the way, we sat on Stephen's Green. Tall yellow trees wrestled their skirts at us and swore. Cyclists flitted past, dropping drugs to groups in shrubs. Peter arrived in a taxi and we decided not to go to Moley after all. He said he knew a rooftop cafe we should try. I wanted to go to the Shelburne, but they were only serving residents. Overhead, a loft of pigeons swooped their figures of 8. My feet began to hurt. The cafe was indoors, so I didn't consider it rooftop. The girl there didn't know what a small Americano was. Buskers sang You'll Never Walk Alone in Grafton Street. Their voices drifted up. Dave told Peter of his diagnosis and smiled. Peter stopped, talking about his poetry. We watched crowds of shoppers laden with bags and flowers. People stood in pub doorways to see Liverpool go 5-0 against Man U. Dave said Maguire, the 97th, had died in July. We swayed down that street, autumn on our lips, holding on to each other like flailing leaves. Streetlights turned our faces grey. A junkie sat statue still, as if he had been dropped from the sky, ragged wings tucked into his back, and all I was about to say was lost with the rising wind.
And now we have another trip to Trinity College thanks to Annetta Stepien.
Hello, my name is Annetta Stepien and my poem is called Dublin Pride. I am Dumne Path, a proud peacock, looking for a place to spread my tail. They told me to go to Trinity, the museum building there. Its beautiful Venetian decor might provide suitable background, they said. I enter. To my surprise, animal skeletons welcome me. I am Dumne Path, a proud peacock. I don't fret. First impressions are not always great. Excuse me, which way to the pretty view, I say. I go where I am told. I lift my head where hundreds of colorful stones shimmer, overwhelming me. I am Dumne Path, a proud peacock I remember as I climb the long winding stair until I reach a spot in dazzling glare. Around me tiles shine, pearl blue, navy, green. There I spread my tail feathers fully, imposing, standing out proudly, yet blending in.
And now for our final wander through the city section of this issue. I'm proud to welcome Elaine Westnott O'Brien, Fiona Bulger, Catherine Kay, Sheila Ryder, Nasu Husari, who will be reading in Arabic with a translation in English, Nessa O'Mahony, and Ola Majikadomi.
Date night. The gate awaits us. We stroll hand in hand down April streets, less self-conscious than at home. You come reluctantly, an evening of Plath more my thing than yours. You knew what you were signing up for. Your poet wife always gets the last word. Still, it's a thrill to have just us. No fussy baby or grabbing toddler. I wear a white dress in celebration, one I can't wear at home for fear of little hands, Weetabix baked beans. We walk in evening sunshine up Marlborough Street. A drunk shouts from behind and we drop hands, little hell flames of shame. I mutter to you that he's just cracked, probably talking to himself. Still, we speed up a little, leaving room for the Holy Spirit. Good Catholic girls going at a clip past St. Mary's. The drunk speeds up, all sour cider stench and slurred slurs. Lesbian legs! I don't think he means this as a compliment. I am indignant. I haven't much to recommend me, but I've nice legs. We reach the gate, hearts thumping. We sidle closer. The lights go down. I grab your hand, stroke your wedding ring. April snowdrop. No wrinkles. No stars.
I'm Fiona Bolger and I'm reading my poem, Crossing Stephen, which is my green. 1. Today I'll double cross you, reclaim the name. There is no park and hardly a street or bridge that hold a woman's name, and Phil must hold all the colour in his hands. 2. This time, this park is usually full of people eating lunch and music. Instead, the daisies flourish, a sea of stars. We are spread out and quiet. A woman makes C with her arm, and a walker shapes A as he goes by. Couples make W, while an outstretched reader makes an L. The world is ready to be read and reading. We can guess how come about the name, how come about the way, and how round about we can turn the way differently. 3. Each one mapping their own way. Now the daisy chain, the stars, the fairy lights guiding us. How it came about the name of this place. The victim has lived long enough to rename it. Here in Dublin, this park in full bloom, a place of daisies. Daisy, daisy, give me your answer, do. 4. Chain me up, tie me down. This victim needs to name the place, needs to map the route, the anger and the destination, crossing the map which is my way to find the countess who fought here. Was it Stephen's Green then? And Herzog's gift for kindness shown to refugees. 3 muses, I honour them today, and the little girl who sees the water with all her body throws herself towards it. I would wish to see the world full-bodied, to hear with hands and feet, to smell with mouth, to speak with skin. 6. I'm plucking petals from the daisy. Will I? Won't I? Can I? Can't I?
And now I'm delighted to introduce you to our youngest ever Storm star. At 13 years old, this is Evie McGettigan Murphy.
I walk the streets of the city where I was born, where my dad and mam, and their mums and dads, and so on, cemented their legacies on the grey pavement. Trees rustle as the sweet music of buskers fills my ears, the scent of the mixing pot engulfing me. Tourists and locals alike bustle around the green as I look at the gaiety and picture myself on that stage where I long to be, the stage where my parents went during college. I catch a glimpse of myself in a window, a face crafted by years of Dubliners, people who fought for freedom and sang ballads, and I smile.
Hello, my name's Catherine Kay and I live on the beautiful Inishowen Peninsula in Donegal.
This poem is about his very special and historic Dublin building, the Museum of Literature Ireland, fondly known as the Molly. Moving on at the Molly. Flash or pass, a returning visitor of the cultural corner, this city homage to James's muse. Slippery marble entrance echoes early grandeur, intellect and art plaiting through time. Circumnavigate confetti-like postcards, no love reminders needed now. Past the portals of literary voices, skip advice from O'Brien, Gregory, Shaw. Heaney's words reverberate through you. Dive through each polished exhibition space, no desire to indulge Joyce in his story today. Descend glossy stairs to the old cafeteria. Early, fresh-faced students once guffawed and charmed. Chance the late September sunshine. Wander out into the higgledy courtyard. Wobble bistro chair with weight shifting. Watch the fig tree shade dapple well. Sense reader's garden lavender swirl. Place embossed paper, a present from him on your wedding day, solid and square on the ornate table. Refresh and renew. Scribe with the gift shop biro, ink on parchment. Begin the letter to your future self.
Heart of Dublin. Zoom in, zoom in. There, beside Dublin's rumbled Victorian fruit market and bone of St. Michan Street Church, it's an Astro basketball court, settled on the fringes of the city wearing its heart on its sleeve. A congregation of people playing, yeah, all nationalities. They're laughing. Listen, having the crack, beachy sounds mingling with noise of city outback. I stand and watch, my heart awake. Zoom in, imagine joining in.
Nassau is from Damascus and Dublin has been his home since 2015. This poem was inspired by the rioting in Dublin some time back. Dublin.
لا تخجلي حبيبتي. حين كسر ابني مزارية الورد لم أخجل لأنه تعلم. حين أحرق صورة من صور ذكرياته لم أحزن لأنه قلب صفحة أليمة من ذكرياته. لا تخجلي حبيبتي. إنما فعلته للقادمين إليك كثيرا. عندما غادروا الجحيم كنت جنتهم، وعندما طلبوا العلم علمتهم، وعندما طلبوا العمل أهلتهم. لا تخجلي حبيبتي. حفنة من المشاغبين الصغار لن يلطخوا وجهك الجميل. ما زلت أبا العواصم وأجمل حبيبة.
Dublin. Don't be ashamed, my beloved. When my son broke the vase of roses, I wasn't ashamed because he learned. When he burnt a picture from his memories, I wasn't sad. It was turning a painful page. Don't be ashamed, my beloved. What you did for those who come to you means a lot. When they left hell, you were their paradise. And when they sought knowledge, you taught them. When they sought work, you prepared them. Don't be ashamed, my beloved. A handful of mischievous youngsters won't tarnish your beautiful face. You remain the brightest capital and the most beautiful beloved.
Hello, my name is Nessa O'Mahony and my poem is called Crossing the Rosy Hacket for Ola, 6th of January 2024. Lewis eels through Dublin's nightscape, empty carriages etching curves, leaving the lights of Parnell Street along shuttered streets and chop fronts to the clank of Marlborough rails. Earlier, we'd listened rapt as the poet spoke of the fear and shame a night of fire had left in its wake. She wondered if they were right and she didn't belong here. We shook heads, dropped eyes, or not at all's falling short. The tram trundles, crossing the river, no obstacles on the journey south. Over water, ripples merge, arrow wakes fixing sight till forms resolve into tall sweeps of neck, bent heads, plump backs, wings curved to propel, stately negatives in the night, assured of their right of way.
Love letter to the city. I've walked O'Connell more times than I can count. Been there, done that, it's not new dumsa. Clia, níl si furfa, kinál durcha, ach tugan si fuishiv thum. Siúlam na shradana agus mohim brodul. Brodul, we've come so far, yet so long to go. For rear, you do feel shaky, walking some places, Gohorha mar vans na hianta and whiffing air. They get surprised when I speak Deshkert. Don't get it twisted, I know all of Clia. Or Mia, Deliveroo gives us delicious taste. But remember, we don't need to waste, cause we've got problems on our Shradana. A Corsin, the capital's starting to feel like an unid shoppadorta, trying to be like Cahir London. Magra gal, kneeling keelig buintleshin. Build the houses, na horizon, keep na hoston out. We're glorious, young, old, August na sheen share. Black, white, ajuk, all of us, we're a part of her. Balia Clia, Neil ain doubt you can do nís far fós.
Hello, my name is Jack Kennedy and the title of my story is Temporary Regression. The train home is like a time machine. Watch as the years blur by in reverse. Feel yourself grow younger in mind, if not body. By Ballybrophy, you are 28. By Mallow, you are 21. Then, meeting your dad in the train station car park, you are 16 years old. Lying into your bed, the bed of your childhood and adolescence, a place for stories by torchlight and action men and video games and self-discovery and self-hatred and long, long nights of idle dreaming, you feel as if you could be 14 years old. The next morning, seeing the sun shoot slantwise through the blinds, you think for a split second it is the summer holidays. Long, seemingly endless days of leisure and boredom and sun. Always sun, despite the rareness of its appearance in this place. Every memory awash with the glow of golden hour. You'll walk tango, swim in the sea, cycle in ever-expanding loops on quiet, windy roads. With such an excess of time ahead, you decide to sleep in. You are 10 years old and will not get out of bed before 12 o'clock. Groggily seating yourself in the kitchen, your mother fusses over you. Cooks you eggs, sausages, rashers, black and white pudding. Makes freshly squeezed orange juice. Has a bag of pastries from the Super Value down the road. There is no question of you doing the washing up, or any action that could reasonably be construed as work. You are helpless and dependent, and all of 8 years old. By the time the sun sets, you are as coddled as a newborn. Snuggling underneath the blanket, you may as well be returning to the womb. Waving them goodbye at the station, you feel a lightness in the pit of your stomach. A sudden weightlessness, as if you may suddenly take off and float unmoored in the skies above. Like an errant balloon, some child's plaything lost forever in the vast expanse of the grey. The countryside blurs by, the years a smudged kaleidoscope of green grey, green grey, green grey, each year indistinguishable from the last, as monotonous as the anonymous fields flitting past your window. By Mallow, you are 21. By Ballybrophy, you are 25. By Dublin Euston, you are the wrong side of 30. Arriving back in your shoebox, you can recall your age, but would rather not think about it. Unpack the bag, fold up the laundered clothes, pull up the shutters, crack open the window. Set the alarm for the morning. Another early start, likely another late finish. In the kitchen, you put the lunchbox in the microwave. Watch it spin. Listen to a hum. Smell the scent that fills the room. Garlic, oregano, tomato, cheddar cheese. You close your eyes, fall back the years. You are 5 years old. You are at the kitchen table, and she is bringing you a heaped plate of lasagna. Sunlight streams through the windows, nary a wrinkle on her face. She is smiling. Tango is at your feet. You are hungry. You are home.
And now we are moving through the suburbs thanks to Karen J. MacDonald, Martina Carney, Patrick McAvenue, and then we enter Glasnevin Cemetery thanks to Helena McKenney and myself, Damien B Donnelly.
I'm Karen J. MacDonald, and this is my piece of creative nonfiction, A Portobello Portal. Arrival. Bunting draped from one side of the tiny lane to the other, a fine welcome. After hours of sweeping damp and dust, I open the front door, look towards the avenue. The exit is blocked by an altar, awaiting the Corpus Christi procession's collective imprimatur. Fish and chips will have to wait. Jesus. A strange smell in the house. The scent is carried, like notes from an invisible harp, far beyond the river,
To the canal border of Dublin 8 and my cottage, it creeps down the disused chimney, filling the day, playing under my sleeping nostrils. I wake to a multi-bedroom. Eventually it dawns on me. Over at St. James's Gate, they're roasting barley for the black stuff. Each roasting day, I sniff the air in the house, promise to set it down in black and white. Consider myself a local. Before they disappear, there's a butcher on a corner in Lennox Street and 2 abattoirs within sniffing range, parlour shops in the front rooms of 2 Up, 2 Downs, Rita's at the end of Little Walworth Road, and nearby the owner's wife swoons when my not yet well-known lodger crosses the avenue in slippers and dressing gown to buy sausages for our weekend fry-up. Encounter. Turning into Kingsland Park Avenue, my head is deep in Saturday's Irish Times. Wow. I swing around, and there, on a warm granite windowsill, sits the big white cat I'd chatted to weeks ago on Walworth Road. I have been remembered. Morning coming down in the clear light of early summer. I'm solitary on the Sunday street, strolling to the Bretzel Bakery for cheesecake and bagels. A sigh of lovemaking drops from a partly opened sash window on Victoria Street. The loneliest sound in the world. Canal story. I don't know better, so I feed the swans. A large cob clambers onto the canal bank, hissing. 2 things with swans. Wear gloves when feeding them and take no shit. I hiss back. The swan takes bread from my hand. A car screeches to a halt beside us. The window rolls down. A stocky head leans out. Jesus, I've never seen that before. You should be on the television. He drives off. The cob looks at me. Hisses encouragement. The feeding continues. Another canal story. When Gus has to go to the vet, we amble down the canal to Charlemagne Street, him wrapped up in a towel, tucked into my long, flapping coat. Children in the back seats of cars, stuck in traffic, mouth to their mothers and point at the ginger cat growing out of that woman walking along the path. One midnight, we don't take the canal. Don't tempt fate. We walk slowly through the Portobello maze and fetch up at Kelly's Corner, passing the Manhattan onto the end. I come home alone, weary, walking quickly. Every shadow a ghost, a threat, a grief. Neighbours. When May's Stephen kills himself, I make a cake. When Daphne's Joe dies, I bring chocolate oatmeal biscuits to the door. I don't stay. I am gauche in the face of death. At Kathleen's funeral, I weep. Daphne slips into the pew, mothers me in the emptying church. When the eldest son across the road is killed in a car crash, I stand at my front window, measuring the weight of sadness under the lid of the low roof. One small skylight in perpetual darkness. The boy who would switch on the night lamp, extinguished now. Departure. The car is packed. The countertops have had a final wipe down. 2 friends arrive with flowers, coffee, pastries from the Bretzel. I hold it together until I hug May. Thank her for loving Gus as much as I did. She waves me off. We'll never meet again.
Hello, my name is Martina Carney, and I'm reading my poem D8, Camino. Granny's firstborn was doused with holy water, James's Street Church, where Ireland's pilgrims began their Santiago Camino. Widowed, torn from town to fields far from Inchicore, from tea and Macari's and salt-soaked chips. Dublin Days returned to Thomas Street. Frawley's first communion dress, first glasses to Gilna's, first stolen purse. Meath Street for markets, Manning's Bakery for buns, the Mills for hen's feed. No Grafton or Henry Street for us. And there were also lasts. Her last breath, James's Hospital, last rest in Massey's, tainted lilies staining the scallop shell. My passport had many stamps along the pilgrim's way, taking the path to poetry from unknown alleys, to Dublin, where the brilliance of Iolite, Viking's compass, steered my Camino, to Dublin 8, to Inchicore and James's Gate. Thank you.
Here comes a short story by Patrick McElney. It's called High Noon. I hope you enjoy it. Old age is most unglamorous. It's no fun when you look in the mirror and a guy older than your father's in there. When gravity has won all the battles, and you've no hair worth talking about, and dull eyes, and a few yellow teeth, and 2.5 chins, and a huge tummy, and skinny white legs, and sore feet, and you're always tired. And there's more. Of course, there are some advantages to being old. If you haven't been taken hostage by Alzheimer's, then you might have a treasure trove of memories to lighten the days. I haven't, and I have. I remember one bright spring Saturday afternoon a long, long time ago. I am just a little fella with a short, ill-fitting coat, with 3 buttons and a cardigan covering a blue shirt, and short trousers and socks to my knees and dirty brown shoes. And I'm happy as Larry. My big brother is with me. He's holding my hand. He held my hand a lot in those days. We are queuing outside the Tivoli Cinema, Francis Street in the Liberties of Dublin, with hundreds of other Liberties boys and girls. Just across the road is the Ivy Markets. My mammy shops a lot there, with her mammy and me. That's where I got the clothes I'm wearing now. Down a bit from the markets is our butcher's. A bit further is Johnny Ray's, who has the best ice cream in the world. We often stop there just for me. Mammy completes her shopping in the wonderland of Thomas Street and Meath Street. The queue is getting boisterous now. The usher is losing control, so he throws open the doors and we're in. We pay our 4 pence and stampede for our seats. We make it to the old wooden seats and stake our claim. My big brother and I are happy. We have our bag of sweets and a little drink each. We settle down, get comfy and wait. Soon the lights fade slowly to darkness and the big screen crackles into life. We are ready to go wherever we are brought. But first the ads. Nobody here cares about Vaseline, Brill Cream or Sunlight soap. The kids near the back are stamping their feet already. The noise is deafening, but when the trailers start you can hear a pin drop. This is what we'll be watching next Saturday. Next comes the Follier Upper. It starts where it left off last week and ends where it will start off next week. And most of us will be back to see what happens. I hope the Lone Ranger rescues the girl, but that's a given. Then, magically, the screen gets bigger and we are transported to a small town called Hadleyville in New Mexico. The year is 1876 and the West is wild and wonderful and worth watching. Gary Cooper is town marshal. He is the hero, the chap, but he's in big trouble. The Miller gang are coming to get him. They're going to gun him down. There's 4 of them and only 1 of him. But now there's 200 little cowboys from the Liberties rooting for him. We have his back. And we've been here before. Every Saturday afternoon we support our hero. And I don't think we've lost one yet. But his new wife, Grace Kelly, a lovely lady, wants him to leave town. She's very religious and doesn't like violence. And anyway, she doesn't fancy becoming a widow after a few hours of marriage. We know he won't run. We know this Marcel's too proud, too brave, too good to do that. He reminds me of my Uncle Jack, who lives just about 100 yards from the Tivoli. So every time we see Marcel Cooper, we clap and cheer and kick the back of the seat in front of us. And it's bedlam in the Tivoli, and the usher runs around with his mad flash lamp and roars at us in disgust, and it's all great fun. And when the baddies appear, we all hiss and boo and whistle, just to let them know what we think of them. So we watch closely as the marshal attempts to swear in a posse, and we share his hurt as one by one his ex-friends let him down. One is seen disappearing out of town on a fast horse. Another hides in his bedroom and lets his wife open the door. His deputy hands in his badge. Nobody signs on to face the Millers. Only the town drunk and a young kid offer to stand with him. But Marshal Cooper declines. So it's just the Liberties gang and the Marshal. And the Millers are here. All is deadly quiet. It's high noon and the sun is blazing overhead. The street is dry and dusty as a lone tumbleweed tumbles. We hold our breath and the shooting starts. The Marshal is fast and drawn a good shot. He downs 3 of the gang, but the last baddie gets the drop on him. Just as our hearts are about to be broken, a shot rings out and the last of the Millers bites the dust. And the Marshal's new wife, Grace Kelly, who would later marry into European royalty, stands with a smoking gun in her hand. The Marshal embraces his princess, and as the credits roll, we are already stumbling and pushing and barging our way out of the Tivoli. Some little guys like a fight after the cinema, and a few skirmishes break out. But me and my big brother are in the clear. We slap our behinds and whinny our way up Francis Street. I love my big brother for that. He's too old to be a cowboy, but he does it for me. We turn left onto Thomas Street and gallop past John's Lane Church. Turn left again onto Mead Street, and at Catherine's Church we ride hard down Earl Street, straight onto School Street and into Marylebone Lane Flats. At number 28 we dismount, give our horses a rest and go in. We're home, Ma. Our mammy has her tea on. I remember it so well that Saturday afternoon. The Wild West is long gone and the day of the cowboy with a fast gun is over. The Liberties have changed too much. My mammy and her mammy and my Uncle Jack are gone. And my big brother. I left him up in Mount Jerome a few years ago. But I will never forget my big brother and the day he galloped home with his kid brother. 2 cowboys, not a care in the world, riding tall in the saddle.
Beautiful Things by Helena McCanny. 2 yellow plastic roses grow perennially through vegetation on Roger Casement's grave. Here headstones gather in crowds, a quiet festival, a speechless uprising. Words lament a father. With your willing hand you gave so much to others, with little in return. Daniel O'Connell's tower reaches ever upward, resisting time, liberating always. Perfumed needles pierce the crimson berries. Deadly yews offer opaque shade. The carved faces of an angel mother and 4 cherub daughters lament the Sea Point tragedy. On Arthur Griffith's grave, a broken column stands erect, a life cut short, work not yet done. In the dead centre of Dublin, beautiful things never last. Not roses, not children, not revolution.
Births, Deaths and Dates by Damien B Donnelly. I'm 49 when I find your grave, not far from former father, me, the son, and you, surrounded by the fallen. I'm thrown by the date you died, there in cold cadaver stone, the date I was born, and you, not born here, an immigrant, as we all were once clambering through everyone's gate, a fact forgotten, now the gate is our own. An Irishman returned for the first time, orphan almost, sailing after losing father, mother, staying, working, uncle taking you home to Blackrock of all places, the place where I was born. There on the day you died, and orphan too was I. After she signed the papers, gave me up to the good grace of the nuns. I wonder if she thought they were as good as their word. Sold some, they did. Those good nuns with their good graces, grabbing coppers from unwed mothers, parishes pushed out, cast out as outcasts. But there was I, a cast in Blackrock, suckling on the first beat as you took the last, resigned finally after rebels, riots, revolutions, revolves back to the Big Apple and on to England, to Parliament, pushing, being pushed, a hero hated, they said, some still say. But you were gone when I came to know anything of you. Who in the West I heard a recent rejection, or of him, father, who she calls my father instead of her husband, and now, after both, I try to fill in all I missed. A man with round glasses, long nose and hats and overcoats to hold it all together. Watching you on Kilmainham's screen in black and white. Back where you were kept, where they were killed, the others were 14 shots still echo in a stonebreaker's yard, and today in other yards. Shots still. You, the last to be captured, condemned, then pardoned, sentenced to a short stay instead of a quick shot to silence. You surround them now, under the weight of a Celtic cross. Did it carry them any further than the dream delivered? And here I stand, Having cleared one man's grave and my own conscience for never knowing him, by the bones of another man I never knew, well buried the worms have rummaged. And I wonder, as you ran out of breath there on that day I was born, did you hear me cry before I'd learnt of loss? Next up we have Emma Kavanagh. Noel King with a drive to the aftermath of the Stardust. Taking us down to ground level we have Jackie Lynham, followed by Tiziana Savarino and Dermot Crawley. And first of all, taking us to the flats, we start with Barbara Dunn.
Pumpkin Pie in the Mun by Barbara Dunn. The first time I ever had pumpkin pie was at the top of one of the 15-storey towers in Ballymun. Well, nearly the top. I hadn't planned on being there that Christmas. My plan had been to keep Buzz company in his small bedsit. I was going to cook dinner on the small 2-ring stove that sat on a box at the end of his bed. We'd eat in front of the television and watch movies all day. Buzz would get steadily drunker as the day went on. I was looking forward to it. It was cold, but it was bright as we walked down the South Circular Road early on Christmas Eve. Buzz was stopping off at the off-licence and I was going on to Camden Street to get the grub in. I loved the faded grandeur of the road. The tree-lined avenue down to Leonard's Corner. The trees bare now, and all the leaves turned to brown mush. And then the grand old Dame Georgian houses, mostly flats now, but dignified in their decline. I bought chicken Maryland in the butcher's, spuds and Brussels sprouts in the grocer's, and some mince pies for dessert. The street was buzzing with last-minute shoppers. Lights blazed in every shop. Outside a pawnbroker's shop window I stopped. There in the window was an old-style pocket watch. It was perfect for Buzz. It would fit nicely with his green velvet waistcoat, the one I'd found in a skip a few months earlier. I pushed the door open and entered the dark interior of the shop. A fox-faced little man eyed me from behind the glass. "How much for the brown pocket watch in the window?" I asked. "£10," he shot back. I fingered the last note in my pocket. It was worth it. At 4 p.m, disaster struck. The television went pop in the middle of countdown, and the screen went blank. The flat was eerily quiet for a few moments, until Buzz started cursing and banging the box, hoping his anger would cow it into working again. Then he paced about the small room, cursing and swearing for an hour. I tried to reassure him that we'd be fine, but he wouldn't be consoled. He needed the TV on like he needed his cans and his smoke. He put it on first thing in the morning, and if he was in all day, which he usually was, then it stayed on, even if he had company. Sometimes he remembered to turn it off before he got to bed, but sometimes he forgot. Usually the same time as he forgot to go to bed. I'd wake up and he'd be slumped over on the couch, can in hand, with some early morning daytime TV show on. Right now, he was sitting morosely on the couch, staring down into his can and smoking a joint. The doorbell rang. It was 6 o'clock. Buzz went down the stairs to investigate. Who knew which of Buzz's many friends and acquaintances it could be looking for a place to crash for the night? From downstairs I heard a deep, "How are you, Buzz? What's the story?" Relief. It was Jackdaw. He was even taller and skinnier than Buzz as he entered the room, a guitar case slung over his back. The room seemed tinier than usual. "Ah, Babs, good to see you," as he bent down to give me a hug. He sat down and started skinning up. Buzz gave him a can, and I listened as they exchanged gossip and news. When he heard about the television, there was no hesitation when he said, "Sure, come on over to the Mun with me tomorrow. Me ma is cooking. She'll be delighted to see you. Ronnie and Eddie will be there. We'll have a blast." It didn't take too much persuasion to convince us to hop in a taxi with him the next day. Wonderwall was blaring in the taxi when we got in, and Jackdaw, in a voice as smooth as chocolate, said, "Turn off that shite and play something decent, will you?" Once we left the city centre, I could see the towers lined up in a row on the North Dublin skyline. From a distance, they were like lighthouses, guiding us all the way. The taxi parked in the shadow of the flats. As we got out and Buzz paid the driver, I gazed up. Not even the coloured lights hanging around Christmas trees from every balcony could hide their bleakness. Boys and girls raced piebald ponies, bareback over the rubbish-mottled green in front of the towers. Their wild shouts carried over the roar of the wind. Jackdaw and Buzz were all chat as we made our way to the mouth of Sean McDermott Tower. Boarded up windows scrawled with graffiti, wrapped around the ground floor like a balaclava. The metal doors were windowless grey and had bolts across them that wouldn't have looked out of place in Mountjoy. Were they to keep people out or in, I wondered. We entered the dark cavern of the tower block, and Jackdaw stopped briefly to see if the lift was working. No, still not fixed. Bloody bastards. We'll have to take the stairs, so. He pointed us towards the nearby stairwell. I looked up into the dark and shivered. As we climbed up endless flights of concrete stairs, the wind coming through the exposed stairwell became colder the higher we climbed. I wish I'd worn another jumper. We passed the occasional syringe discarded in dark corners. I tried to distract myself from the stench of piss and vomit by looking at the hieroglyphic spattered walls. I could hear the disembodied voices and footsteps of others approaching. Jackdaw knew everyone and greeted them by name and a cheery "Happy Grimbo!" Even the silent ones with dead eyes and gaunt faces slumped in the flat spaces between levels. I pretended to be brave, but I was relieved when we passed them by. At last, we walked along an exposed landing, high up overlooking the north side. I could see an aeroplane coming into land. The engines howled as it descended, a hungry wolf. Jackdaw stopped outside a green door and rooted around for his key. It was unexpectedly warm inside. Long legs like baby giraffes stuck out from along an old comfy sofa. His brothers were there already. They got up and hugs and insults were exchanged. Ronnie, the eldest, was considered the best looking of the three, with his winsome smile. Jackdaw was the baby and the star of the family. He looked like his hero, Shane McGowan. And Eddie, well, he was stuck somewhere in between. A woman came out from the kitchen. "Jack, you made it!" And she wrapped her arms around him. "Happy Christmas, Mom," he replied. She greeted us, and I handed her the bottle of red wine Buzz had bought. She didn't look at all fazed by our unexpected arrival. Kathleen was a soft-cheeked woman, her skin puffy round the eyes, with short salt and pepper grey hair. Her voice had a trace of an American accent. She told me she had come to Ireland from the States to study and had never left. Jackdaw had once confided to me that his father had been a well-known actor. They had once lived in a grand house down on the canal, but by the time he had come along, the family were living in Ballymun. When he was 3, his dad had run off back to the States. He had whispered to me that all he remembers of the night his father left is the clumps of his mother's hair lying in the bathroom sink. We didn't talk about those things that Christmas Day. Instead, we had turkey and mashed potatoes with a side of fresh cranberry sauce sitting around the small table. We drank wine. The crowning glory of the meal was pumpkin pie, carried aloft from the small kitchen by a beaming Kathleen. Jackdaw carried in the big bowl of whipped cream and placed it on the table with a flourish. "This is the best pumpkin pie you'll ever eat," he assured us. I wasn't so sure I'd like it, but I didn't want to be rude, so I took a small bite of the warm orange tart. It was delicious. Afterwards, we drank, smoked, and talked. We exchanged small gifts. Buzz wore his pocket watch with pride. He gave me a pair of amber earrings that glowed orange around my face. Jackdaw played guitar and sang ballads late into the night. Later, we ate seconds of pumpkin pie. He was right. It was the best pumpkin pie I had ever eaten.
My dad went to school there. He told me about it as we passed it by one day. He pointed to the sign above the door. St. Kevin's School for Girls, it read. Just until he was 7, he said. Then he went to a boys' school, of course. He doesn't talk much about growing up in town, about his granddad driving carts down Harcourt Street and dying one day under his horse, as my father's dad, still a boy, went for chips, or about the small house they all shared, or where they played, he and his brothers. He does talk about summers in Milltown, catching eels in the Dodder and bringing them back on the bus, feeding an imaginary hippo in a cupboard, the colour of his mother's hair and chickens in the back. I know a little of this side of him, can touch it at least. The other remains out of reach.
Stardust. Dad is sleeping and snoring in the passenger seat. I think this is the first bit of sleep he's gotten since last Sunday. Mum is doing the driving now. I am staring out the window. I fiddle with my new Walkman I got for Christmas. Can name every song and every order on the cassette. But I can't place the headphones on my ears or turn it on in case Mum wants to talk. I have to keep her company. We're glad Dad is getting a bit of sleep. It was he who took the call from his sister's husband in Dublin last Sunday morning. Did we hear the news? Had we the radio or telly on at all? There'd been a fire at the Stardust Artane, unknown numbers burned to death. Fiacra, my cousin, my age, was missing. As it was Valentine's weekend, the place was jammed. My name is Finbar, and Fiacra and I were like twins when we were together. But now it's surreal. Now I am going to Fiacra's funeral. It was 23 hours after that first phone call that Dad got confirmation from his brother-in-law that Fiacra was among the dead. All our neighbours came in to sympathise. A lot of them hugged and kissed me. It felt weird. I'm not used to being hugged by people outside my family. I will be 16 soon. Fiacre often came on holidays to us in Kerry, and I went to Dublin too, and we hung out with each other's friends. Last year on Halloween I was above in Dublin. My auntie and uncle said we were too young to go to the Stardust yet, but promised that when I came up next time we could go. We would be both 16 then. I can't close my eyes. Every time I do, I just see Fiacre's face in the fire, smoke coming through his eyes, his ears, his mouth. Mum has RTE Radio 1 on in the car. It comes and goes as we lose and gain the signal. Maurice O'Doherty, the newsreader, in his very serious tone, is telling us again how padlocks were placed on the insides of the doors. Dad supposed it was to prevent revellers from letting their friends sneak in. I went to school last Monday morning. We thought it was best that I could have the 2 days off school for the funeral. And I think they were right, Mum and Dad. I faced the boys and the teachers and the shock and the prayers and the constellations. Some of the lads in my class would have met Fiacre at some stage or other. In fact, a few of them had gone to the National Stadium with us to see Horslips in concert. Our next door neighbour had the Irish Press yesterday. It showed a picture on the front with the shell of the nightclub. The smoke even appeared to smoulder in the photograph. That brought stinging tears to my eyes. That photograph is still haunting me. We stop at a petrol station. Mum decides she wants to find a coin box to ring home to see how my younger sisters and brother are doing. The woman who lives next door to us is minding them. Dad chastises her. Jesus, sure, what can we do if there's a problem and we're so far away? Wouldn't they be better off not realising it's you on the phone? She doesn't agree with him and slams the door as she heads to the coin box. Then she slams the receiver down in temper after checking her purse and comes back to the car to see if either of us have any change. I give her all the 10 pences that I have, and I think Dad has a 50 pence. A smile cracks out on my face. I am happy because they are arguing. Usually I hate it when they argue, but this is like they've forgotten our bereavement for just a few minutes at least. We are in the moving traffic again, just touching Leinster now. My parents are obsessed with the news on RTE Radio 1, and every report is bringing the same story. There's nothing new on the Stardust. No further rise in the death toll. They talk about that and about the hunger strikers on the radio. I am sick to death of hearing about the hunger strikers. I ask if we can listen to 2FM, RTE2, the new pop station. When we get to Dublin, how will Dad react when he meets his mother and father, his sister and brother-in-law? They will all hug and kiss me too, and I hate having anyone kiss me. Except Katrina Murphy, of course. Katrina Murphy is a different story. She let me kiss her in the cinema a few times. Then at a birthday party last month, she let me put my index finger inside her bra. That was nice. I was all blushing and stuff at the time. They're always saying at home that when I get older, if I study hard, I could go to Trinity College in Dublin and maybe become a doctor or something posh. Something better than the painter and decorator that my father is, although he has made a good living and has 3 fellas working for him, or a primary teacher like my mum. I'm going to have to face the funeral, the sobs, the black clothes. Mum got me a black tie this morning before we left. It's the first time I've worn a tie since my confo, or confirmation to give it its proper title. We stop again and Dad goes to a phone box and makes a call. He doesn't say to whom. After a few minutes back on the road, he says my aunt wonders if I would like to do one of the prayers of the faithful at the funeral mass. I have to think carefully about it, wonder if I can keep myself together if I agree. Eventually, a small okay comes from my lips. Dad turns in his seat then and says, "Son, you do realise it'll be a closed coffin? The burns, you know." I turn my face out the window and start to cry again. As difficult and all as I expected it to be, I thought I would see my cousin laid out in his best clothes in the coffin, and that we would get to touch his cold, clasped hands. I would get to give him a gentle punch on the shoulder and say, "All the best, buddy." But of course, the penny drops now. The coffin will be closed. It's a national grief, my father continues. We should console ourselves with all those who are reaching out to us and praying for us. We are Fiacre's family, but there are 30-something other families bereaved too, 30-something other funerals. Then a man on the radio is saying, things will have to change after this. Fire officers will have to visit every public building in the land and put strict regulations in. Turn off that radio. I want to scream at my parents, but I don't. Isn't it gas, though, that it takes a tragedy like this to have regulations and things? But sure, that's always the case. This is Ireland, after all, you know. Mum and Dad are chatting now, so I put my earphones in. I have a bootleg tape of Horslips, the Belfast gigs. I listen to that for a while. I close my eyes and pretend I am at the National Stadium with the lads. Katrina Murphy isn't into Horslips at all. I played her a few of their tapes, but she just doesn't get them. Maybe she's a bit immature. Her favourite group are Adam and the Ants. She's into ABBA too, a bit, although she doesn't admit to it. He was a big Star Wars fan, was our Fiacre. When we were looking forward to The Empire Strikes Back opening this coming summer, as if he was reading my thoughts, Dad says, they're burying him with a model of Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know. His mam, my father's voice is breaking now, his mam told me they put Obi's head at Fiacre's elbow and his feet resting at the end of Fiacre's thumb, like he was holding a baby. When we arrive in Dublin, they will give me the prayer to say at the Mass, and I will practice it and practice it. I'll be ashamed of my Kerry accent. Well, not ashamed as such, but you know yourself. It'll be, what's the word, self-conscious. It'll be bedlam in Dublin, with loads of newspaper reporters and that, I suppose. We're nearly in Dublin now, Dad says. I know that, of course, because I've been on this road many times. Mum and Dad swap driving duties again, with him now in the driving seat to negotiate the city traffic.
Ground level. You are now on level 1. Hands must be sanitised before entering and exiting the premises. I know the quickest route to the public toilets. Automatically turn left for phlebotomy, which I still can't spell or properly pronounce. Admitted into the unknown of tests and procedures at 16, my file is now falling apart, weighed down by pages and pages of results, observations, recommendations. The white 1990 reg car parked opposite the entrance mirrors the suspension of time within the hospital walls. I walk briskly down the North Circular Road, abandoning those confined to wards. Brendan Behan is alone at the canal today. No pigeons perched on his bronze shoulders. No lager cans or plastic bags crinkled at his feet. But although he doesn't acknowledge my silent salute, his presence soothes me. It is winter 2023. I am almost 50. I am grateful to be on ground level.
Hello, my name is Tiziana Severino, and my poem is called Saturday Night at the Dublin Bus Stop. Saturday night at the Dublin bus stop. A man with grey hair and a dreamy gaze, mumbling incoherent words in a faraway tone. A puking girl lost in her phone. She threw up so quietly, I only realized what was happening when a speck of vomit landed on my tights. Walking away from all the madness, taking shelter in the privacy of my room, I stop and stare. One less pair of tights. Disgust, contempt, and understanding all running through my mind. A dancing bear and a milk-stealing hare would not be out of place at this Dublin bus stop. A fox, a rat, and a yoga mat would be just one more nut.
Walking in St. Catherine's by Diarmuid Coley. After Etty Gluck, Wojtek Gluck, Leon Gluck, Isak Shishi, Ephraim Sachs, Jean Sachs. Hard-fought figs ripen on Dufferin Avenue, long persecuted by July rains. In spite, I steal a dawn walk through sleeping terraces, per vias rectas, the muggy canal glued with algae, air not yet broken by coffee. A few early dogs trot on titled streets. Here Etty Steinberg walked to St. Catherine's School on Donore Avenue, got ink on her fingers, ran messages for her mother, played in the warren of Little Jerusalem. In the Greenville Hall Synagogue, she became Etty Gluck, seamstress, young Dubliner. The couple sailed into the net of Europe in good faith. Antwerp, Paris, then the Pyrenees. Her brother sent letters. The postmarks read Bolia Ohoclia, reminding everyone to grow food for the wartime effort. Escape visas to Belfast arrived the day after they were whisked away like barrels of salted herrings to Drancy, then Auschwitz. She threw a postcard from the moving cattle car. A miracle brought her coded news back to Raymond Street, Dublin 8. A final communication, because you want others to know what became of you. The noble Ficus Carica that sailed from the Mediterranean, a global odyssey, ripening here against flaking red brick, also has no choice. I steal too with unequalled devotion for my bon vivant lunch.
And next up we have Doreen Duffy, Aisling O'Meara, Alan McGee, Rachel Tierney, Grania Daly, Catherine Cronin, and former Storms editor from issue 2, Eileen Dupuer.
Hi, my name is Doreen Duffy. Thank you so much, Damien, for including my story about two boys in issue 4 of The Storms. Two boys. I kept saying to myself, don't be scared, don't be scared. There's no need to be scared. The biggest lies are the lies we tell ourselves. Our teacher says that. I'd called for PJ early in the morning. We were going up to Kroger to see could we scrounge our way in. This is what we did every week of the season. If not Kroger, we found something else, just to stay out all day. PJ would figure something out. His plans rarely worked, but he'd be so definite that they would. I was happy to go along with whatever he said. I'd hang back a bit, let him do all the talking. Get busy watching something, squinting my eyes against the sun, ram my hands in my pockets, tried to look like I had a right to be there. PJ used to say we were like blood brothers. You're the perfect partner, you know when to keep your mouth shut. I wasn't so sure that was a talent, but it made me feel good when he said it. I'd knocked quietly on the front window. PJ's dad was sometimes what his ma called a bit worse for wear. PJ came to the door, eating the end of a piece of toast. His ma was behind him, turning the latch so she could close the door quietly. How are you, Jonesy? She smiled at me, whispered for us to mind ourselves, flicked PJ on the back of the head with the tea towel. PJ was the image of his ma, sallowy skin, dark shadows around his eyes. Our teacher was always saying PJ looked wrecked. You should get to bed earlier at night, Dunn, so you might learn something. PJ never used to answer him, just nod as if each time he said it was a good idea, something he'd try. He never said why he looked so tired. He rarely said anything about it, even to me, and we told each other everything. Some things were better not talked about. They could be forgotten quicker that way. Anyway, he'd learned the hard way. It did no good to try and help his ma. It only made things worse. The last time he tried to tackle his dad, they ended up sitting in A&E for hours, her face broken and bruised. But still, PJ always used to check with her before we went out. Did she need anything? Was she sure it was okay for him to go? Some of the other fellas used to give him an awful time about it. He didn't care. The sun was shining bright on us today and on all our ideas. White fluffy clouds raced overhead. We sat on the curb, him talking, me listening. He was writing his name in the dust at the side of the road with an ice pop stick. He looked back over at his house every now and then, chewing on his bottom lip. The train's brakes, screeching to a halt in Euston Station, drew us over. We hung over the bridge, looking at the bowl of black, oily water beneath the huge grey wall. Do you know what, Jonesy? If we don't make it as professional footballers, how'd you like being train drivers? All day travelling to faraway places, for free? I didn't know what to say. I knew I wasn't anywhere close to being as good a player as PJ. I didn't want the dream to change. I grabbed the ball off him, ran out into the road, kicked it back to him. Are we going up here or not? He was on it in a second. He was fast. He started telling me about his dream. We were playing for Dublin. This was the same dream PJ told me about 1,000,000 times. He was running, zigzagging all up the road, dodging imaginary players while he gave me the running commentary. I joined in. The best bit was he told a great game. We could be whoever we wanted, switch positions, be in goal or out of it. We got to the top of Infirmary Road. I kicked the ball, caught it with the side of my foot, made a bollocks of it. It landed in the gutter of the garage and the corner house. I put my hands on my head, crouched down in my hunkers, peeped through my elbows over at him. I thought he'd go mad. But he was already shinnying up the wall. You thick, you Jonesy, he said, but he was laughing. I'm only messing, I'll get it back. We could hear that mad dog barking in the backyard. I'll only have to stay up out of his way, he said, hopping up onto the top of the wall, inching along till he came level with the side gate. Fuck, you want to see this dog, Jonesy? He's only a fucking little snapper, and the bark on him. He thinks he's a Rottweiler. He kicked his leg out, shaking it, goading the dog. He was cracking himself up laughing. I was falling around laughing too. Then I saw him. It was like everything went into slow motion. He kicked his leg out too far, reached to grab onto something, but there was nothing there. His arms swam against the air while he fell the short distance straight down onto the metal spikes on the side gate. He folded in two. The points of the two big spikes pierced straight through his middle. He was completely still. I looked at his body hanging there. I remembered the time my dad dragged my mattress out to the front of the house, threw it doubled up over the wall, the big dark stain there for all to see. My face burned against the cold of the window where I knelt beside the huddle of wet sheets. My dad was banging around downstairs, opening cupboards and slamming them shut. As soon as he grabbed his coat and left our house, I saw PJ stride out of his house. He ducked between the parked cars, dodged a car coming down our road and weaved his way over to ours. He lifted my mattress, drew back his fist and punched it so hard it fell flat, hidden behind the wall. He kept walking. He never mentioned it to me, ever. PJ's head moved, just slightly, enough to be able to see me still standing in the middle of the road. I tried to just look up into PJ's face, trying really hard not to see where his body was slumped over the railing, trying not to think about the blood oozing thickly down the black bars, warming the cold metal as it ran, trying not to wonder about his insides and which parts were punctured by the thick spikes that ran straight through him. I wanted to run away from the sight of him, but I couldn't. He didn't even look 12. You could see the little kid look off him. His eyes reached mine. They were glassy. The shadows around them darkened against his skin. I went closer. The closer I got, the less of the mess I could see. I stared up into his eyes. He closed them, slowly. I drew in a shaky breath. His throat gurgled. He twisted his head, tried to lift his chin. He knew I was there. I had a pain in my throat. I didn't want to cry. I looked down at the ground, at blood spatters darkening on my runners. "You have to be okay, PJ," I whispered, my voice cracking. "You have to." There were people starting to gather. A woman was holding her child close to her. She'd turned the child's face into her so he couldn't see. Her hand covered her mouth, but you could still hear the whispered "Jesus Christ" behind it. I could see one of the women off our road running up with PJ's ma. She was still holding the tea towel, clutching it to her chest as she ran, her eyes straining to see, her teeth biting her lip closed. I heard words come out of me. My voice was crackly, but slowly, quietly the words came. "PJ Dunn takes to the field. He gets past 1. He gets past 2. I got a bit louder. "He's through on goal. No one can touch him. He's only the keeper to beat. He shoots. He scores. Can you hear me?" I roared, tugging the shoulders of his jersey. "PJ Dunn does it again for Dublin and in the final minute of the game." I could see his ma, her mouth open. There was a wailing sound, like a siren. A trickle of blood drew a line from the corner of PJ's mouth. I reached up and tried to stop it with my sleeve, but it kept coming. Thank you, Damien.
Croke Park, Sunday. Gulls gather, wheeling, querulous, quarrelsome. Crowds below, oblivious to circling scavengers above. A whistle, a crash of ash, a slitter pucked high in late summer sky. All eyes follow the ball, blind to bright birds scattering above the hill. 80,000, singularly focused, hands to mouth, to head, to fist. The strain of the crowd rises, falls, a soothing wave in droning summer heat. Cries bawl out from the stands. "A ref, blow it up!" One last frantic push by players ends in a torrid tangle of hurls and limbs. The whistle sounds. Fans release a clamorous roar. Music booms triumphantly. Above the earthly tumult, seagulls squawking, sensing somehow that their time has come.
And now I'm delighted to present my sub-editor for this issue, Fiona O'Rourke.
Hello, this is an excerpt from an autofiction called Bullet Points by Fiona O'Rourke. Sunglasses, mask, you're scarfed beyond recognition for your walk into town. You've to deliver a form to Dublin City Council. This is within your 5k travel limit to get you out of the house, to gain fresh air, to see other humans, to feel seen. You glance up at the shopping centre tower and wish the blocks could be painted multicoloured. What Phibsborough needs is a giant Rubik's Cube. You're invisible, and so is everyone else in their lairs. Masks on or masks dangling from one ear. There aren't any smiles on offer. On Constitution Hill, bothered by traffic growl, wind in hair, waiting on the green man to light up, a guy starts shouting from across the road. A passing bus silences him, but only momentarily. He reappears again with hands cupped around his mouth. Provo! 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 He shouts like a madman, has the look of the street with his sun-dirtied complexion. Maybe he's on the cusp of homelessness. Provo! 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 Shouting right at you. Your heart begins a warning thump. It's the north, circa 1980. You're surrounded by prods when you take the wrong shortcut and your Fenian school uniform singles you out. A string of troubles, newsreels, flashes before your eyes. Another blur of yellow, the 155 bus for IKEA, windows dotted with passengers masked and glued to their phones. Provo! Provo! He emerges on the other side. Do you look like a Provo? Sunglasses? So what? Everyone wears dark glasses on painfully bright days. None of the drivers whizzing past or glancing wildly at you. In a piece of fiction or on Netflix, a driver would stop and ask the shouting man, "Is this Provo bothering you?" An armed unit would swoop. You'd be fired into the back of a military vehicle, the smell of leather boots in your nose. Provo! Provo! For fuck's sake, this is Dublin. The word Provo feels last century, out of circulation. If Provo were the name of a hipster craft beer, you wouldn't bat an eyelid. Already there's a cocktail called Belfast Car Bomb. Provo! Provo! Now there's an old lady on his side of the road, sat in a motorised wheelchair, gliding past a set of bushes, and he's shouting in her direction. Her mask hides any expression. Old lady Provo? Surely not. But then again, equal opportunities. If you were to write this into a story, old lady Provo would tell him to stop acting the feckin' maggot, or at least she'd call him a gobshite. She would produce a majestic, retractable walking stick and batter him about the head. She motors on regardless down the hill while he continues, Provo! Provo! The traffic light beeps you across to his side where he paces and shouts. There's a sudden loud rustle in one of the bushes and a yap, yap, yap. The pointed nose of a dog emerges from the greenery, a miniature short-legged lassie-type dog, the type to save the day and bring a tear to Jimmy Stewart's eye. Ah, here, Provo! The man's eyes are fit to disappear and his smile fattened cheek. Is that your dog, you ask? And he lifts the fluffy mutt and cradles it like a child. His hands are average and inoffensive. For the story, you could rewrite them as swollen beer hands, blotched with shaky tattoo letters. Make them more unpredictable and create tension for the reader. You wonder about yellow nicotine stains, but that would be overkill. It is, yeah. I called her Provo. I love the Provos. Up the IRA. Although there's no danger, ancient anxiety continues eating you from the inside out. Up the IRA has you glancing left and right and behind, to a time when such freedom of speech would earn the slogan shouter a romper room and front page of the Irish News, with a full page 3 of death notices to their name. You can't just go around shouting up the IRA and expect to skulk off untouched. You remember the envelope folded in your pocket. If you had a watch, you could look pointedly at the time and be on your way to the council office. The man is now dancing cheek to cheek with his dog called Provo. Provo, Provi, Bon Jovi. You recall a letter from an English prison written by a young guy you knew who was put out of Belfast by the Provies for antisocial behaviour. He said he used to scare the English inmates with his accent and they thought he was a Bon Jovi, so they left him the fuck alone. Somehow you could segue that snippet into the dog called Provo story. Realistically, the story can't be called The Dog Called Provo because the title would be a spoiler. You're from the north yourself, Provo's owner declares. Your inner last century voice goes, aye, and who wants to know? You nod. What part? County Antrim. You don't specify which town, of course, but exercise your northern right to remain cagey. Did you ever meet Jerry Adams? Provo's owner wants to know. No, I never did. You laugh, thinking of tourists who might inquire if you know a Sean O'Hara from Galway. I met Jerry Adams loads of times. Great man, up the Provost, up the Ra. He holds the dog in the air like a banner and roars, up the Provost. He spins around and goes to step right into the traffic bulleting down Constitution Hill. Mind your Provo, you scream. A volley of angry cars sound their horns and he pulls back laughing. Here, he says, you saved me Provo's life. I won't forget that. I won't forget that. In a fictional story, he could one day save your life, just as you saved his dog's. But too obvious. Dress him up, write him as wearing the long coat of a Victorian dandy and a battered trilby hat, an undecided beard and piercing eyes. He could be a mysterious, truculent, seldom-seen mentor who annoys the shit out of a character in need. They could meet on Constitutional Hill. The dog could be called Rebel. Any resemblance to actual persons or animals, living or dead, or actual events could be purely coincidental.
Van Gogh, Dublin Exhibition, The Immersive Experience. We sit in a warehouse room, waiting for Van Gogh to appear. Strangers scatter across the floor. Some recline, others hold chairs. A woman deep set in a wheelchair. A man withered in a bed cart, like a pupa wrapped in olive green cloth. Children skitter like demented cats, pouncing on specks of skittish light. Parents stand with folded arms. Couples keep their distances neat. Walls hold canvas tight as skin. Light flicks to dark, to silence. Breathe in, breathe out. Sparks bristle along walls, falling beneath lines, strokes. Lead and paint become words, become ground, become colour, become trees, become sky, become us, sinking to the floor, renaming ourselves.
Hello, my name is Rachel Tierney and I'm going to read a poem that I wrote actually a number of years ago when I was attempting to get my foot on the property ladder in Dublin, and it's called Life Without Stairs. Last month I bought a flat in Dublin, squeezed my life into 10 feet, 2 rooms, 1 floor. Now, with 1 foot on the property ladder, I find it strange that there's no stairs.
Dublin Mountain Air by Grania Daly. A delicate breeze carries the sweet hint of Sitka spruce on a granite path at the height of Crewe. There's robin song in the air, a shrill little note along Dublin's hills, overlooking ships ferrying freight to the north wall, sailing past the scarlet pin at Poolbeg, the red of a kiss from a Monto mistress, warming her lover's bed in a flat off Mount Street, whispering to him to take her up the feather beds and make love to her on the springy heather, purple-headed, tough to the touch, like an old brush or a man in his prime. A fragrant wind lifts from Massey's, carrying hints of oak and hazel to the woods at Crewe, where a couple dream of cherry-red kisses in a feathered bed in Mountville.
Hello, my name is Catherine Cronin, and this is my poem, Skerries. On a walk around the head, you tell me again how, in all the world, this name is unique. You point to St. Patrick's footprint, puddled in the rock, mapped as an apostrophe of land on the county. And you promised to show me the breadbasket fields where you picked spuds as a young fella. What a place to grow up, between sea foam and soil. I imagine lavender jellyfish landing ashore as if to grab a 99 in Jerry's, or chance a tentacle pull of a slot machine in Bob's Casino when it was still there. And I presume today's turns compete with drones for the best views of the windmills or your da on the golf course. You pretend it was easy to leave this place and cross its sea, but you show it off every time we visit, and I notice how your voice changes with the waves, rising an octave above the noisy crash. Your shoulders drop too, unburdened by emigrant indecision as you let yourself be washed up on the rocks once again.
Hello, this is Eileen DePuer, and it's great to be back on Eat the Storms with Damien. This is The Span of a Petrol Sea. Dusk drops, a violet luminescent bomb. It's warmer than it should be for November, and a storm is coming. You can feel it on the wind. Gulls have gone to ground, pipits crouch in marsh grass. Cars file home across the wooden bridge, their headlights fallen stars jostling between the fence posts. Waves lick at the tires, hungry for road and space dust, all the dry, bright places they can never be.
And now, For a final journey along the shore, we have Owen Devereux, S.C. Flynn, Helen Dempsey and Geraldine Walsh.
My name is Owen Devereux, and this is Dublin 2. Etched on the upright post, underneath my Brooks leather saddle, a simple cipher tells the place, the week, the month, the year I was first assembled. The alpha-numeric code reveals I was crafted by Dublin hands in an alpine-roofed factory where the Dodder kisses the Liffey at famed Hanover Quay. Mouser Nolan from Inchicore, indentured for just 2 years, built my sturdy rally frame. When he was done, charge hand Frankie Byrne, born and reared in nearby Ringsend, added tires of Indian rubber and the shiny St. Christopher bell. Pat Morrissey, a labouring man from Irishtown, pumped my tires, oiled every crank, nut, bolt and moving part, before proudly wheeling me over Buck Bridge to Amiens Street Station, secured in the guard's van and dispatched on the evening goods train. The sloping, sleepy town of Enniscorthy was my final destination.
Hello, my name is S.C. Flynn, and my poem is called Lookouts. Poolbeg Power Station, Dublin. The Poolbeg chimneys are 2 giant barbers' poles, still advertising when the shop is closed and the scissors of pollution are blunted. Maybe from 200 metres up they see, beyond the incinerator's smoke, many more decommissionings to come. A cleaner future with nothing like themselves. And they will become gigantic pencils thrust out of the past into a new world, writing each other out of history.
September sun. 29 degrees in traffic, throbbing engines on the Snail Trail, Beach Road, Sandymount. Stifling smells of car fumes and the sewage works linger in the breezeless air. 2 boys in trunks splash in the shallows, while their mother, curved with a third, stands sentinel. They loll as baby waves lap, chase each other with a ball, and race to the shore shrieking. It carries to the stationary commuters. A flower pot doubles as a bucket and spade. Unhampered by their tool, their construction stands. Mother's Martello Tower. They never stray from her. Does she fear a modern-day Leopold will come and steal their bloom? A road-bound mollusk moves, and I, autumnal adult, shunt on my way, losing the childhood idyll while paying the toll to edge across the river. Turn onto Sheriff Street, where 2 boys play pirates on the main. They wear cheap goggles and brandish plastic weapons as they clamber over railings and brick walls. The younger sports his battle scars, bruises from the struggle to compete with the elder, who climbs sure-footed like a shanghaied cabin boy on a clipper's rigging, reenacting some celluloid blockbuster or swashbuckling his imagination. The lights turn green, orange, red, green. Passing moments. Motorists accelerate as make-believe memories dissipate like car fumes.
Home is Where They Are by Geraldine Walsh. It's in the marrow, the suck and sweat of me. I expect him to have the knowing of me and understand that it's not in the words I speak, but in how wet and sinewy the syllables sound in the mush of my mouth. He distractedly listens in the way the seagulls rock back and forth with the swell of the sea. He is there, and then he's not. We sit on the grassy bank of Ladies' Beach, not too far from the echoes of our two-bedroomed apartment in the town I grew up in. The town he has now consumed as his own, and the town they will claim too, the one I'd rather leave for the dried-up roots it offers. What held me here is long gone. What I need from here is long gone. The marram grass whips the small of our backs, and the salty air stings in the crevices of small cuts we don't know are there. She plays close by, using her small hands as shovels, gathering a modest pile of shells beside a mound of bristling sand she assumed from her digging. The baby is asleep on his lap. He gently rocks his legs from side to side in such a way that she may think, if she had the ability of such thoughts, that she is caught in the gentle swell of the sea. I momentarily panic at the thought of how fragile she is. My mouth dries and eyes flare as he swings his legs from side to side and the bundle of her dips in his sway. She'll fall. Of course she won't, he says, adjusting the lay of her along his thighs, her cradle cap head pointing to the sea and Lambay Island seeming to drift away from us as the waves roll in. He holds the thin skin of her bare toes, leaning to kiss their curled tips every so often. Her eyes squint as though the dip of the sunlight invades her sweet, innocuous dreams. He can barely feel the weight of her. What were you saying? He asks. If this is to work, he will have to read between the lines, dissect the pulverized vowels elongated alongside my putrid breath. He will have to see the dirt and want to smear it away with the brush of his sleeve to be okay with how very vacant and muddy this life could be. For me, if not for him. I want to tell him that they nuzzle and squirm their way into the gaps of me, that there is no space to birth my way out of their grasp, that I am all but consumed and dissected. But he cocks his head and shares a pitying look with the wind that dips in and around us. Or perhaps it bellows only around me, considering it is a fine day full of warmth and memory, the joy of them between sand and sea. Yet I am burnished with the wail of an invisible wind. Battered. Nothing, I answer. She stands, and my breath catches as she straightens herself out on her practically newborn deer legs. She wobbles and tentatively lifts her bare feet over the mounds of sand to a spot where black seaweed has gathered. She falls as her foot catches in the rack and cries. The sand, thick with crushed shells, stings her knees. She is too little. She can barely navigate the softness of the carpet in the front room. What made her think she could travel the rough terrain of sand waves before her? Her cries bellow as blood spots reach the surface of the graze.
I am mute and immobile to her wails. He lifts the baby from his lap and lays her gently on the fold of his jacket that sits at my feet. He rushes to his firstborn, lifts her into his arms and nuzzles her neck in the gentle way he does to reassure the women in his life, a warm hand resting on the already healing cuts. The baby squirms as the light shifts and she too begins to cry at being pulled from her comfort. He focuses on the child who pours herself into him, curling around his neck, pinching the thin hairs of him. The baby almost howls, grimacing into the sun-soaked sky. Her face angrily twists and she bashes the air with the jittery movements of her limbs. Her tender body, no longer impaled within mine, gravitates to the side as the roar of her rocks her body. "Hush," I say, and ache with the bawl of the wind only I can hear. "Hush, please." He is looking at me with that soft sideways cock of the neck. The 3-year-old will not let him go, desperately owning him over her mother and sister. The wind rushes, the sea roars, the seagulls mockingly caw, even the skies begin to darken, and all I can think of as everything I belong to crumbles within me is them, the 3 of them needing me. "Pick her up," he says, "before she chews on the grit." But I cannot touch her. I have touched her enough.
And the final section of issue 4 of The Storms is called Across the Sea. And to take us there, we have Sinead Griffin, Sarah Hirons, Rodrigo Scainardi, Marie Studer, Teresa Donnelly and Margaret Royal.
The night before she's due to fly, she taps to say goodnight, turns my world to black and white. I keep the clipping somewhere in a box, but I know the coat by heart. The backbone of its 3 toggles out front, the velocity of its soft velvet hug. Stephen's green, hood up in the little red duffel, a toddler racing to feed the ducks. Her picture next day's grayscale in the evening press. She's packed no winter coat for Australia. This time she's running towards the sun.
Hello, my name is Sarah Hirons, and this is my poem, Offering. 24 fat sausages, a piece of Dublin 15, bought after Mass for my son. He's away. Swaddled in cling film and borne across borders, now gently sweating on the counter of our Berlin apartment. So this is how they say I love you in Irish, I think, as I fetch the pan.
Hello everyone, my name is Rodrigo Shenergy and my story is called My Dearest. My Dearest, I've written to you a couple of times in the past and always ended up abandoning it. As I sat myself down to write to you once again, I've come to the bittersweet realization that I've now spent more time without you than I ever did with you. It's been over 9 years since I left you, not by choice. Being forced to leave you is perhaps why I feel that we haven't finished business and I never got the closure I needed. Not that I want or could forget you, though I'm sure you've forgotten all about me. Many have and will talk about you. I understand them. We are never exclusive. Unlike them, I'm not a Dublin child. I could consider myself an adopted son, but I'd rather call myself what I really was, your lover. As such, when we were together, I was prone to see your qualities and ignore your faults. Our 7-year affair was rocky, but I tended to tip the scale to the positive side, and my reluctance to leave you sooner was proof that I was still in love with you. From my arrival in early 2008, you welcomed me into warm and inviting sheets. I, a man from the tropics, could have done as hundreds of my compatriots who got to know you did and complained about your cold, wet weather. I embraced it. Finding out that I was neither unique nor exotic to you, because you had numerous others like me before, made me feel cheated, but that was the price I had to pay. To compensate, you made me feel special by providing me with experiences tailored to me. In doing so, you made me the man I am today. Even though I was 27 when I first met you, I was inexperienced and shy. You, much older, with much more history, were wise and seasoned. You guided me, made me feel comfortable, as well as pushed me out of my comfort zone, like having to share a small flat with 4 other people, not to mention a cramped room with 2 of them in the 2-story brick building turned into flats on North Circular Road. If my first place wasn't too far from Phoenix Park, my second, on Hull Street, was just a few steps away from what I came to call my office, Marion Square, where I so often sat to contemplate residents and visitors walking by, and where I tried to write. My school was across from it, through a bright yellow door in a Georgian building. Years later, I was shocked to find out it had been closed down by the government amid the Schools for Visas scandal. By then, I had moved another 3 times and had come to understand your division between North Side and South Side. I had learned to admire the one who divides you, the River Liffey, on whose shores I could sit for hours, sometimes undisturbed, sometimes distracted by the flow of tourists or by loiterers asking for a smoke. From Dublin 2 to Dublin 1, on noisy and eventful Parnell Street, a few steps from my favorite bookshop of yours, Chapters. Even far away, sadness swept over me when I heard it would close its doors, followed by relief when later news confirmed it wouldn't. From Dublin 1 to Dublin 6 and my first time living alone like a real grown-up at the age of 30. I'll never forget Garville Road and Leafy Ratgar. The bed seat, old and in need of maintenance, seemed perfect at the time, and it won me over with the built-in shelves in one of its corners, which my mind filled with books as soon as I stepped in for the first time. My contentment wasn't long-lived, as the owner lost the period house to the bank, later the most expensive of 99 houses sold at an auction in 2011. It was upsetting for me, who had been there for just a few months, but even more so for my neighbors, some of whom had lived there for over a decade. From those times, I remember the outings to Palmerston Park whenever you provided me with sunshine on my days off, and the pleasure of getting off at Cowper Lewis stop and walking home through Cowper Road, my favorite of your streets. After my work days at Dundrum Shopping Centre, admiring the magpies squabbling when it was still daytime, and the foxes furtively crossing the street at night. My last home with you was also my longest. I was fortunate to find it when I did, because soon your housing market was rocked by soaring prices. I'll never be able to afford a studio in the heart of Rathmines now as I did then. What a find that neighborhood was for me. Bookshops, restaurants, a library, a college, Portobello on my doorstep, and the city center within walking distance. The flat wasn't perfect, but was certainly an upgrade, with its small fireplace and a lovely landlord who at times, despite the years I lived there, still got my foreign name wrong. To think that my original plan was to stay with you for 6 months, 1 year at most. What if I didn't like you? I asked myself. Little did I know. To improve my English was just an excuse. I wanted excitement. I wanted out of my comfort zone and my small town in a country miles away. I wanted to finally be who I was. All that, Dublin, you made possible. During the day, I divided my free time among your parks, shops, and cafes, my favorite being Bewley's on Grafton Street, which I was also relieved to learn wouldn't close down as had been announced, while at night I made sure to enjoy your bars and nightclubs. If Dices and Coppers were the places to go for my straight friends, Dubliners, Irish or foreigners, looking for the shift, the equivalent for me was found on George Street. Between the George and the Dragon, I danced, I drank, I searched, I found. And in your short summer evenings, I was able to walk back home, where I didn't have to look over my shoulder to open my also yellow door at home in Leinster Square, because you provided me with a sense of safety. You've changed, and so have I. I've kept up with the news, feeling sorry for what's happened to you, or perhaps just bitter. After all, the changes were already there in my last few years when I joined a master's degree to be able to stay with you. I did it not only out of need. It seemed a sort of natural progression after all those writing courses at the Irish Writers' Centre and elsewhere. Where else to study creative writing? You exhale literature, not only from Bloomsday, but also fueled by your new stream of contemporary writers, a rank I dream of joining. Would you consider me one of yours? Whenever I visit you now, we look at each other with the distance of ex-lovers, questioning if we are still the same. Somehow, the scale now tips to the negative side, but as I said, it could just be bitterness. Am I focusing too much on the bad? You're now referred to as a tech hub, which isn't necessarily a downside. However, development and progress have their costs. You've become one of the most expensive capitals in Europe. I can hardly afford to stay with you whenever I visit. Traffic's gone from bad to worse, and accommodation is increasingly scarce, a seemingly hopeless matter. You've become even more international since I left. But let's not even start on all the disturbing news about racism and growing insecurity. My last job in my last few months with you brought me to the airport. As I took the long journey from Rathmines and back 5 times a week on the 16 bus, I often caught myself worrying about how to find a way to stay with you after my work permit, awarded after the completion of my master's, ended. It's as if you already knew it was the end of us. You, wise, brought me to where I needed to be. In my first week working at the airport, I met the one. Not a Dubliner, but Irish, one who lived abroad. My soulmate, the one you prepared me for, and with whom I've built my life. If you are a lover, he is love. 7 months later, in February 2015, you and I bid our goodbyes. I would have lived with you until death did us part, that's true. Now, do I imagine a future for us? Perhaps in your ever-sprawling surroundings, who knows? Either way, I value what we had and miss our time together. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you. My dearest Dublin, you will always have a place in my heart. Love, Rodrigo Chenergy.
My name is Marie Studer, and it's a privilege to have my poem in this wonderful Dublin Days edition of the Storms. Thank you, Damien. The poem was inspired by my late mother and her late friend Mary, who lived in Raheny prior to Mary emigrating to Canada. Diaspora Heart. Year after year, the maple-stamped aerogram spilled Christmas smiles, white as untrodden snow, honouring friendship forged in Raheny. Pauses perforated the paper, moments lost to the piercing whistles of freight trains, rolling unlit carriages through Calgary's long winter haze. A throb, like the sound of a solitary gull cry on Dollymount Strand. Diaspora heart, forever to surge at last and first sight of the red and white chimney stacks stabbing the skyline in Poolbeg.
Hello everyone out there. My name is Fiona Donnelly and I am absolutely delighted to be able to read for you my poem, Dublin from a Distance. The Dominic Street classroom within a classroom had grown too small for a tall girl with too wide an imagination. So I bid farewell to my cat-hating neighbour, my rickety-kneed grandmother's, and, with its canary yellow door, the only place I would in all honesty ever call home. Like a proverbial fairy tale, my blue-veined feet followed a trail of fresh breadcrumbs to Dublin Airport, gripping a cream and tan stitch suitcase bought in Roach's stores. Like many before me, I flew into a feverish sky. A glance back, saw rheumy-eyed parents standing still as sculpted stone. I sought out faces, places, cities that shone like polished silver in sunlight. Bewildered, bewitched until, on the breath of a soured summer, on a streetcar ride through Cabbage Town, amongst a sea of lost faces, a wild hungering took hold. I missed the pieces of the life I had left behind in rain-threatened streets. The waters of Dublin Bay, the sad sunflowers growing in a south-facing garden on Raglan Road. Neither Joyce nor Beckett taught me how to mourn Dublin's mercurial temperament, its dynamics, its drunken mischief, its dichotomy, its marrow, cartilage and bone. The street theatre, the history, the bridges, bakeries, the green, the people, beautifully raucous, or on holy days, quiet as church mice. I craved the smells that once had been pumped into unwilling lungs. The Liffey, cloying brewery barley, wet wool, Mr. O'Reilly's homemade cough tincture, fuliginous smoke dissipating into autumn air. My city remembers me in the past tense, before my naive mind grew intimate with airports. I left her. She never left me. A moment's peace. A destiny of my own making.
Hello, my name is Margaret Royal, and the title of my poem is The Nuances of Language. Those times when life becalmed him far from Dublin, waking with heavy heart, half-broken memories of youth's halcyon days, the honeyed comfort of his mother's hug, a feathered nest, love nurturing his soul. My Uncle Finton, washed up on foreign shores, yearned for the hygge of Irish soil, the clamour of city streets and bars, banter with strangers, nostalgia for those simple sights and sounds etched deep in his bones. Nightly the waters of the Liffey flooded his dreams. I ask you, is there a word for this? Indigenous words somehow fall short. The Welsh speak of heirat, the Portuguese of saudade, German folk of Sehnsucht, ancient Greeks of nostos, Russians of Tosca. And the Irish? Maybe curch catches close, yet is somehow still not enough. Whatever we choose, that word seeds its magic in our very being, calling us back to the cradle of our birth. He knew it well, too well, my Uncle Finton. I have never been to Dublin.
And I think it's only fitting to end as we started. This time it's with a haiku for Dublin by Rebecca Darcy. And this is called 100,000 Welcomes. There is space for you beside me on this park bench. Dublin is not full. Gurv Mila Mahagat. Poetic peeps and gentle persons and betweeners and nonconformers, genders all and genders equal. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special episode of Eat the Storms, a poetry podcast celebrating today poetry and prose coming from issue 4 of The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, now available to buy here at eatthestorms.com from our website shop, and also from the Winding Stair bookcase and books upstairs in Dublin, and soon to be available at Charlie Burns in Galway. A huge thank you to all of my star stormers who have taken part not only in this special audio companion, but also those who took part in our live Zoom launch on the 13th of November, and also those who attended our live Dublin launch in our Gillen Castle on the 10th of November. Thank you also to our Gillen Castle. Thank you to Dublin UNESCO City of Literature, Dublin City Council, and also thank you to Fingal Arts and Fingal County Council, without whose support none of this would be possible. I would like to say another huge shout out and thank you to Fiona O'Rourke, who was my extraordinary sub-editor on this 4th issue, and also a shout out to my previous sub-editors, Nithi Casa, who joined me on issue 3, Eileen Dupuer, who you heard today, who was on issue 2, and Gaynor Kane, who joined me for our inaugural issue. For details of all the contributors who have taken part, all 93 contributors who make up the Storms issue 4 Dublin Days from city to shore and across the sea, you can find a list of all our contributors, their photos, their social media handles, their bios over at eatthestorms.com under the contributors section. The podcast itself will be back again with regular scheduled programming episodes next week. We will have a very special episode coming up as usual for Christmas, and we also have a very special episode called Peace for Palestine. More details on that coming soon. But for now, thank you once again to you, the listeners, for joining in on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Music and YouTube. Thanks for listening into this spectacular audio companion to the Storms Journal. Thank you for your support. Feel free to grab yourself some more copies. They make the perfect gift, not just for Dubliners, but perhaps for those who have left Dublin and settled down on other shores, or perhaps even for those who are intending on coming to Dublin, but don't want just a regular guide to the best places to eat, but would like to have a guide to the best stories that we have been telling for over 100 years. My name is Damien B Donnelly. This is Eat the Storm, celebrating the stellar work of 93 artists over 150 pages who have made one Storms journal of poetry, prose and visual arts. Until next time, be safe, be well, be bright, reach out and connect with your community, and as always, stay